Chapter 661. There are two sides to everything. If you can use it well, you will naturally benefit yourself. If you don't use it well, you will only hurt yourself. Where is it? Dustless asked with interest. White Zetsu's face flashed a little helplessness when he heard the words. It may be a relationship of cause and effect. It is unexpected that it would fall into anyone's hands. His pale face was full of embarrassment. Speak quickly. Dustless frowned and said coldly. He cursed in his heart. If it wasn't for White Zetsu, who was personally created by him, he could be absolutely trusted. If it was someone else, he might have been blown to pieces many years ago. Thinking of this, Wuxia suddenly remembered the target of obtaining the devil fruit in the original work. 4th Division Captain Thatch. Blackbeard knew that after Thatch got the dark fruit, he finally killed and robbed the devil fruit. Therefore, he was wanted by the Whitebeard pirates and had to join the evil forces of Shichibukai. Did it fall into the hands of Blackbeard? Dustless's brows were slightly raised and his tone was a little colder. The warm room suddenly turned gloomy and a bone-chilling cold descended. That's not it. He doesn't have such good luck. White Zetsu shook his head. Blackbeard is already witty enough. It's really unfair for God to be so good to him. It fell into the hands of the 2nd Division Captain, that is, Fire Fist Ace. White Zetsu told the truth. Some things have their own destiny. In the original work, it was the 4th Division Captain Thatch who got it, but now it has become Fire Fist Ace. Fire Fist Ace? Isn't that the little brat who wanted to take my head? In his mind, the kid he met in Windmill Town suddenly appeared. Dustless had a playful smile on his mouth. Just a few years ago, he quickly became popular throughout the sea. After challenging Shichibukai Jinbi, he challenged and attacked Whitebeard hundreds of times. As a result, he was caught every time. However, the heroic Whitebeard let him go with a bounty of 550 million berries. Maybe Whitebeard knew that he was Roger's son and showed mercy. Dustless whispered softly. But in any case, it doesn't matter now. Dustless coldly said, fortune and misfortune come hand in hand. But this time, it might be a misfortune instead of a blessing for you. White Zetsu nodded and fell into the hands of the Whitebeard pirates. This was not the beginning of luck, but the beginning of disaster. Immediately investigate the whereabouts of Fire Fist Ace. Once you've figured it out, report it to me immediately. Dustless said coldly, a sinister aura surging from between his brows. Towards a person who tried every means to kill him, Dustless would not be soft-hearted and lenient. Leniency was only limited to people who were sincere towards Dustless. Fire Fist Ace was not in this range. Even if he had some friendship with Garp, he could not understand. Public and private matters should be clearly distinguished. White Zetsu nodded. Since it was Dustless's choice, he would absolutely respect it. This was the essence of existence. Then, like a ghost, he drilled into the depths of the ground. Father, who are you going to cheat again? Take me with you, okay? There was a burst of spatial fluctuations around him, and Yushi came out of it, rubbing against Dustless's face, smiling coquettishly, her eyes full of desire. This. Okay, but you can't make trouble for me, or I will immediately throw you to your mother. Dustless nodded and agreed to Yushi's coquettishness. In fact, he was also worried. Mariewa Gorosei 5 Elder Stars are not good things. Leaving Yushi alone in Mariewa is tantamount to putting her into the mouth of a tiger or wolf. Although this little girl is talented, her actual combat experience is 0, and Kagaya has never taught her ninjutsu. Dustless is the same. Although he knows some ninjutsu, most of them are fancy and so on. Whether they are reliable in actual combat or not, only God knows. And more because of guilt, Dustless also wants to spend more time with her, which can be regarded as making up for the little regret in his heart. Although Fire Fist Ace has a bounty of 550 million berries, he can't make big waves. Father is the best. Seeing this, little Yushi smiled and gently pecked Dustless's face, giggling, singing, laughing, dancing and laughing very happily. Dustless's mouth also swept a faint smile. It is enough to make his daughter happy. In fact, Gorosei 5 Elder Stars, and Blackbeard as well as Fire Fist Ace, are not important anyway, they are just props for fun. When he is in a good mood he might as well play with them, but when he is in a bad mood they are just a punching bag, that's all. This little girl has been too idle recently, I have to teach her some self-defense techniques. Dustless secretly decided in his heart. Yushi inherited the physique of Dustless and Kagaya, as well as the unprecedented huge chakra. Dustless does not expect Yushi to be a strong help in the future, at least she can protect herself. The strength of several women in the system's inner world has been greatly improved. During this period, Dustless has collected many devil fruits and gave them to eat one by one. The light fruit that was previously extracted by the system was given to Kaguya to use, and it is also one of the ultimate devil fruits. Its power is peerless, and after decades of use, Kaguya has already exerted its power to the extreme. As for the other women, Dustless is naturally prepared and has aimed at a lot of powerful fruits. His confidence, the devil fruit ability is naturally second to none. It is impossible to make up the numbers. Father, I also want a devil fruit. Yushi, who was rolling in Dustless's arms, blinked her eyes and said with a hopeful tone. What type do you want? Rubbing the little girl's hair, Dustless asked calmly. Yushi tilted her head, making a thoughtful look, and then her eyes flashed. The ability of that guy called Manchi D, Luffy is good. Hearing this, the tea that Dustless sent to his mouth instantly burst out, and he looked at Yushi with a strange face. This is obviously hinting that Dustless killed Luffy. Chapter 662. Time flew by and 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. Dustless came to the bustling island according to White Zetsu's information and swept straight from the shore. The bustling crowd was clearly visible. Will there be traces of Ace in such a bustling city? Yushi took Dustless's hand and stared at him with childlike eyes and asked doubtfully. It should be. The source of White Zetsu's information has always been accurate and there is rarely any deviation. Dustless nodded softly. Although he also had doubts, White Zetsu has never made a mistake. This is an unquestionable fact. Let's go and see. Patting Yushi on the shoulder, Dustless smiled. Little Yushi nodded and followed Dustless into the street. Facing the dazzling goods on both sides of the street, Yushi, who entered the city, was immediately dazzled, looking at Dustless with watery eyes full of desire. This little girl just picked 2 things. Father is here to do business. Dustless helplessly scratched Yushi's nose and smiled. Little Yushi nodded her head excitedly like a chicken pecking rice, then broke away from Dustless's arms and rushed into the crowd. Shopping in the supermarket seems to be a woman's nature in any world, even children are the same. After half an hour, the shopping spree was over. When he ran out of the crowd, Wuxia was already carrying countless bags of various sizes. Is this what you call 2 or 3 things? Dustless rolled his eyes, his face was depressed, looking at the 3 lives. It was the first time he became someone else's follower. Little Yushi just looked at Dustless with a grimace, then held the candy in her hand and jumped happily. Watching Dustless, who was following her, was speechless. His eyes turned sharply and he used Kamui to swallow the big and small bags. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. If Ibito knew, he would probably jump out of hell. Looking straight at Yushi in front, Dustless also followed. Perhaps the father and daughter were born with a bad sense of direction. After searching for an afternoon, they didn't find any trace of the Whitebeard pirates. They didn't even see the shadow of a pirate. As dusk approached, Dustless could not help but call out Zetsu. Those guys are very sneaky. They secretly trade devil fruits. Ace is lucky to have encountered the dark fruit, White Jew said in a serious tone. The Whitebeard pirates are extremely powerful. Do they need to do devil fruit business? Little Moon, she wondered. Baizu just looked at Dustless. What he meant was obvious. All of this was thanks to him. There's nothing strange about it. The Whitebeard old man is probably trying to get some devil fruits to enhance the strength of the Whitebeard pirates. I'm afraid he realized that his body can't support him for a long time, so he made this plan to prevent accidents. Dustless's eyes lit up. Whitebeard is over 70 years old and has reached the limit of the human body. In addition, he is a pirate and has been on the battlefield for a long time. His body inevitably has countless old diseases. Some of them were given by Dustless before. How many people are there in the Whitebeard pirates? Dustless asked blankly. Not many. This kind of secret transaction is secretly monitored by Marine. There are only a few people on both sides. There are only 5 or 6 people in the Whitebeard pirates. White Jew explained. Well, I thought Whitebeard would prepare dozens of coffins. I didn't expect there to be only 5 or 6. Dustless's killing intent made the surrounding air as cold as ice. Lead the way. With Dustless's cold order, the 3 disappeared into the dusk. Brat, you dare to trick us? Don't push your luck. Remember what kind of people are standing in front of you. Ace said sternly, showing off his ability. In the dark space, Ace looked at the iron boxes on the ground and warned. These large boxes are all devil fruits, but they are all garbage. Only the dark fruit is an exception, but this group of country bumpkins didn't seem to recognize it. However, there is only one dark fruit. Most of them are artificial devil fruits passed down by Doflamingo. Although Kaido used artificial devil fruits to build an army of devil fruits, Whitebeard still chose to be careful and abandoned the artificial devil fruits. The unscrupulous selling is also deliberately allowed by Dustless. It won't be long before those people slowly collapse and die. Nonsense, so what if it's a man-made devil fruit? It's the real deal. Look at 100 Beast Kaido, his devil fruit army swept through the new world. The devil fruit dealer in charge of the transaction with Ace quibbled. How dare you? You still dare to argue? Ace glared at him angrily, flames already burning behind his back. You are the Whitebeard pirates. You have to follow the rules. Otherwise, no one will trade with you in the future except for me. Don't destroy your own future. The pirate responsible for the transaction was not willing to be outdone, but he was obviously not confident. After all, the other side is the Whitebeard pirates, one of the Yonko 4 emperors. The Whitebeard pirates are the law. This is the rule. Hearing that, Fire Fist Ace laughed out of anger. The flames behind him burned even more intensely. Just as he was about to finish them off with a single blow, an untimely teasing voice rang out. The words of the Whitebeard pirates are the rules and the way? That's just self-deception. Can't you see that the reason why Whitebeard is working so hard to collect devil fruits is to improve the strength of your group of sons? To prevent you from being swallowed by other pirates when he dies one day. The disdainful voice resounded through the sky. In the dark warehouse, it didn't disperse for a long time. When mentioning the Whitebeard pirates, it was full of disdain and contempt. Ace suddenly turned his head and stared coldly at the place where the voice sounded. Since everything is according to the rules of the underworld, then I will be the arbitrator as a third party. Now I judge that the dark fruit is mine. As for you people, you will die to purify the air of the world. The calm voice was filled with carelessness, but it was strangely certain. Wuxia and the other two walked out from the darkness. Chapter 663. Aware of Dustless's existence, Fire Fist Ace's pupils suddenly shrank. He instantly thought of the person who was forcibly abducted and flew away a few years ago. He always remembered it in his heart and didn't dare to forget. But after knowing that Dustless was a Marine Admiral, Ace did not rush to take revenge. After failing to challenge Dustless, he simply joined the Whitebeard pirates so that he could come in and face Dustless head-on. Don't stare at me so fiercely, you know that I am a very timid person. Seeing Ace staring at him, Dustless pretended to be afraid. Oh, it turned out to be a vase, but looking at it, it's just a pretty boy. The big man who was responsible for fighting Ace breathed a sigh of relief and stared at Dustless, Yushi, and White Zetsu with a green luster. Some things can't be seen, and seeing it means that he has to shut up. Pretty boy? Hearing this, Dustless was stunned and touched his face subconsciously. It seems that people in every world like to call him that. Father does have the talent to be a pretty boy, but it's better than the stinky beard that no one wants. Little Yushi blinked seriously. Dustless couldn't help but smile and gently tapped the little girl's forehead with a little helplessness. This daughter's personality coincides with his and always likes to tease others. Looking for death. The brawny man who was responsible for trading with Fire Fist Ace was furious. How could he not hear Yushi's ridicule? He immediately waved the blade in his hand and whistled straight. The same was true for several brawny men behind him. Pucci? Dustless saw this scene and ripples splashed in the void behind him. Several long spears made of gold shot out and directly penetrated the abdomen of the 5 men, leaving clear bloody holes. Seeing this, Yushi's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to ask, Wu Chen's magnetic voice that seemed to be in control of everything sounded first. The king's treasure is only limited to me in the world. At the same time, his eyes carefully examined Fire Fist Ace, and he couldn't help but have a bright feeling. Now he is hundreds of times stronger than the young child of the beginning. You are much stronger than before. Thinking of the weak Ace who could be destroyed with a wave of his hand, and looking at him whose strength reached 550 million berries, Dustless couldn't help but feel emotional. This is all thanks to you, you are my motivation to move forward. Ace said contemptuously as he looked at the pirates who were killed by Dustless. These are all scum. Even if the 5 people add up, their bounty is less than 100 million berries, and their strength is completely different from his. I can see regret in your eyes, Ace, who was full of fighting spirit, growled. He can be sure that Wu Qin did not expect that today he would become a big pirate with a bounty of 550 million berries. Regret. Hearing this, Dustless's mouth curled into a playful smile, and he asked with great interest, What do you think I will regret? Regret that you have become a pirate with a bounty of 550 million berries? Or do you think that your current strength can threaten me, so you think that I am afraid of you, so you are happy? With contempt in his eyes, Dustless's eyes were full of indifference. The loneliness of being at the top deeply stung Ace's nerves. His eyes were full of sneers as he looked at Ace as if looking at a bug. As the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, Ace's dignity was seriously challenged. Looking at Dustless coldly, Ace's killing intent was awe-inspiring. This is naked contempt. Dustless knows that he is the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, but he is still so frivolous. Obviously, he is satirizing the Whitebeard Pirates and the person he respects the most, Whitebeard. You think you have calculated everything and can control everyone's fate? Ridiculous. The gears of fate are not something that people like you can predict, and I am not in the range of your narrow eyes. Ace shouted loudly. Immediately, his body jumped up, and bright sparks flashed in mid-air, and the hot temperature instantly melted the steel. Why don't you just vanish into thin air? Stop being so arrogant. Fire fist. A giant flame arm blasted over, and the temperature was frightening. In an instant, the entire dark warehouse was lit up, and the monstrous oppression was frightening. You are the one who deceives yourself. Taking a step forward, Dustless stared indifferently at the large flame fist falling down. He raised his white hand and a golden beam converged at the tip of his thumb. Laser. Was. Accompanied by a sharp piercing sound, the light condensed at the tip of his finger whizzed out, drawing a straight line in the air and unavoidably coming into contact with the falling flaming fist. Boom boom boom, there was a devastating explosion in mid-air, and the blazing heat wave directly destroyed the dark warehouse, and the steel almost turned into liquid in an instant. The coquettish dusk in the evening also shone, enveloping this wailing island. What a gorgeous sunset. But it's also suitable for the final requiem of your Whitebeard Pirates? So that you won't come out of the grave to trouble me, it's also luxurious. Dustless chuckled. What arrogance! Ace's chill condensed, and the hot flame gathered in his hand. The oppressive posture seemed to be more terrifying than the rising sun, and the ground was burned black in an instant. A dazzling light enveloped Dustless, making him subconsciously close his eyes. Seeing this, Ace's face outlined a sneer arc as if the victory was in his hand, and the raised big hand slammed down. Flame ring, pillar of fire. Boom boom boom. The blazing pillar of fire engulfed Dustless in an instant. The earth trembled. This unexpected calamity was like the wrath of the heavens. It happened so suddenly that Dustless was completely unaware that he was directly engulfed. God can't take you, I can only punish evil and promote good instead of him. Seeing Dustless being swallowed, Ace said, and a Marine Admiral would be injured by this move. Punish evil and promote good? I really don't know what this kind of small action is, and you can talk without knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. It seems that the Whitebeard Pirates really have no one. Chapter 664. His eyes widened as Ace stared at the figure coming out of the fire pillar. His face was incredulous as his eyes widened and even showed signs of falling out. This guy can withstand fire ring with his physical strength alone? Ace's mentality was accustomed to storms and waves, but he couldn't help but feel suffocated at this moment. He never felt that this move could kill Dustless, but it's too unreasonable for him to be unscathed. You want to kill me, aren't you prepared? Dustless's eyes looked at Ace carefully as he said indifferently. Between the words, there was no trace of discomfort. Obviously it wasn't an act. Don't be so surprised, I can tell you clearly, now is the beginning of your nightmare. Dustless sneered. Although the moves are exaggerated and powerful, it can't hurt him. Don't get carried away. Ace shouted with a dark face. He suddenly realized that as long as he gave in a little, Wuxia would go from bad to worse. If he gave him a jujube in return, he would give you 2 tight slaps and step on your face a few times. Only then would he be satisfied. So what if I'm proud, can you bite me? Dustless provoked. Then he raised his eyes and quietly looked at Ace, who was still in shock. His pupils twisted sharply and his eyes suddenly turned scarlet Sharingan. The evil eye power began to rage. Amaterasu. The enchanting black fire instantly swallowed Ace's body, but he was obviously prepared. The Amaterasu just passed through his body and didn't touch Ace. Are you an idiot? You have to use armament hockey to deal with a Logia user. Ace sneered, reminding Dustless out of kindness. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with contempt. I just don't think it's necessary to use armament hockey to deal with you. Don't be too self-righteous. Ace heard this and laughed angrily. As a Logia user and the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, it was the first time he heard someone dare to speak so arrogantly. To deal with him without using armament hockey, Whitebeard may not have the courage to say so. Dustless didn't bother to talk nonsense with Ace. He directly appeared in front of him like a ghost and raised his right hand, revealing a small black hole. Seeing this, Ace did not hesitate and hurriedly used his elemental transformation to dodge the attack. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. A strange gravitational force enveloped Ace. That evil and cold devouring power seemed to want to devour him forever. On the other side of Dustless's little black hand, it seemed to be the abyss of the universe. As long as he was devoured, he would not be able to take another step forward. Determination flashed across Ace's eyes. He immediately cancelled his elemental transformation and broke free from the control of gravity. His entire body instantly felt much more relaxed. Seeing Ace materialize, Dustless was like an old fisherman who had been quietly waiting for a long time. He quietly appeared behind Ace, a sneer on his face. Then a heavy kick mercilessly smashed down. Boom boom boom, a black shadow swept the ground out of thin air, the dust on the ground splashed, a large deep pit appeared, and the ground in the pit became like particles of debris. Cough 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 Poochie. After a long while, Ace in the deep pit supported his body with his arms on the ground and spat blood uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth. Dustless didn't use hockey and actually attacked him, and it was not because of the attribute. He immediately looked at the black hole in the palm of Dustless's hand. After staring for a long time, his face was still blank. You are also the son of the Pirate King. Don't be so ignorant. It will insult your father's wisdom. Seeing Ace's ignorant face, Dustless chuckled. You dare to? Witnessing Dustless being so arrogant and conceited, Ace's loosened palm clenched again. When Logia's ability is elementalized, it means that the body loses mass and naturally can't escape the capture of gravity. Not only you, the host of the flame fruit, but every plant in the world is affected and restrained by gravity. Regardless of whether Ace could understand or not, Dustless explained. Why is the dark fruit called the most ferocious fruit? Because its ability is to control gravity, which means that everything in the world is affected by gravity, it's just that the gravity is strong or weak. The gravity of Ace's elementalization can naturally swallow him. In other words, gravity is the natural enemy of the whole world. However, the key is the strength of the host's own gravity. Even when gravity is strong to a certain extent, light can't escape its capture and will be easily swallowed, let alone the flame fruit. Do you still think you have a chance now? It's too boring to use armament hockey to deal with you. It's more suitable for me to trample on your self-esteem like this. Dustless stood with his hands behind his back and calmly looked at Ace. In the moment when he actually met Ace's face, the outcome of the battle was already decided. The outcome of the battle was not how Ace broke out, but how long Dustless wanted him to play. The natural enemy of everything? Why don't you try this? I hope you'll be able to take him down safely. Forcibly supporting his body to stand up, Ace looked at Dustless without fear. He was ready to die, and at the same time, his eyes signaled the crew of the Whitebeard pirates who had been watching the battle in the dark. It was obvious that he was telling them to run. Clearly, Ace was going to risk everything and go all out. Wanna run? I'm a glint fruit user. What do you think the word escape means? Staring at the black shadows fleeing in the distance, Dustless sneered again and again, his body swept with a bright luster, and he almost came to them in an instant. A strong oppressive flash gathered on his toes. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? But looking at your eyes, you shouldn't have enjoyed such high-level treatment. The light gathered on his right calf roared down, and the straight line in the air was particularly dazzling. Chapter 665. Run? Don't you Whitebeard pirates pay attention to teamwork? In that case, going to heaven together is also a kind of teamwork. A voice filled with indifference to life resounded through the clouds. The few figures who wanted to flee in a panic were stunned. They stared blankly at the straight beam of light descending from the sky. Their eyes and faces were filled with despair. Dustless is not surprised by this scene. Most pirates say that they don't care about life and death, but how many people can really see through it? Even he himself is afraid of death. Boom! The light from the soles of his feet hit the ground like a meteorite, setting off a violent storm and vibration. A large flame of light swept up from the ground out of thin air, and then an invisible wave of air turned into a turbulent shock wave that scattered, swallowing everything around it. The hot fire melted and destroyed the surrounding geography, leaving a deep scorched pit in the ground. Boom! A special box escaped the catastrophe, but it was also burned and the surface turned dark red. Obviously, as long as the fire continued to persist for a while, it would melt. You killed them? Eyes locked on Dustless, Ace roared hysterically. The Whitebeard pirates pay attention to unity, and each of them is the son of Whitebeard, which also proves that the feelings of their crew members are also like brothers. Good companions on the road to the underworld, so you won't be so lonely, Dustless said with an expression that should be so. Since Whitebeard pays attention to teamwork and sends all of them on the road to heaven, Dustless feels that this special service is quite humane. Holding the iron box in his hand with a heavy look, Ace couldn't feel the hot temperature. He was like a walking corpse. The death of his companions hit Ace so hard that it almost made him collapse. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me, Ace roared in a low voice, determined to die. Dustless always remains indifferent to this. It's just the last cry of the beast. It's meaningless. It's just an extremely boring verbal protest. It's not very practical. For this group of pirates, Dustless has always held a contemptuous attitude. They become pirates in the name of pursuing their dreams, but more than 95% of pirates are killing and looting, and there is no rule that states that pursuing one's dream is to become a pirate. This is just their self-deceiving idea. Yang Yen. With a burst of sound, Ace's limbs suddenly appeared with some hot flames, wrapping around him, which is also a disguised defense that can resist most physical attacks. Flashy but impractical if this trick is useful. Your Whitebeard pirates would have dominated the New World long ago. Dustless sneered with a cold light in his eyes. Then his pupils widened, and the majestic evil eye power lashed out, locking Ace's position. Almost in a short blink of an eye, Dustless came in front of him, gathering a powerful force in his hand, and mercilessly smashed it towards Ace. As for the flames covering his limbs, he simply ignored them. A single spark could not start a prairie fire. Boom! A powerful fist hit Ace's abdomen, but he had already expected Dustless to launch an attack and used elementalization to avoid the fatal fist. Your sneak attack, I predicted it. With a sneer, Ace's right arm suddenly erupted with a large flame fist, completely condensed by a raging fire. Fire fist. The moment the hot flames engulfed Dustless, his left eye suddenly widened, and a strange purple eye with 9 mysterious magatama suddenly flashed. You predicted it, what's the use? I also expected it, but it doesn't make sense to predict your tricks. The dry corners of his mouth opened slightly, and an indifferent voice came out of it. The corners of his clothes were eroded by some kind of force and swelled instantly. Shinra Tensei. The repulsive force visible to the naked eye erupted in an instant, forming a 360-degree absolute defense. The moment the mighty flaming fist came into contact with Dustless, it was simply swallowed up by this repulsive force. In an instant, the matter was settled peacefully. The exploding flames were like rain splashing all over the ground. Dustless's eyes fell on the broken corner of Ace's clothes, and he smiled, and the Rinnegan Sharingan in his left eye widened again, emitting a mysterious ripple, and the 9 black magatama in the eye socket trembled slightly. Heavenly hand power. Dustless's position and the broken corner of his clothes instantly changed. Disappeared? Seeing Wu Qin disappear strangely like a ghost, Ace exclaimed in surprise. His tone was filled with surprise and disbelief, revealing the meaning of a fantasy story. A living person suddenly disappeared without a trace in front of his eyes, and his breath was completely gone. No one could accept it, and the shock it brought was unparalleled. Immediately, he felt a chill behind him and subconsciously turned his head, and the scene in front of him was quite horrifying. Dustless's face was covered with frost, and his cold eyes had no luster, just like a corpse, staring at Ace with eyes full of light, and there seemed to be countless fangs and a bloody mouth that could easily swallow him. At this moment, Ace never felt that death was so close. Fire gun. Resisting the suppression of the fear in his heart, Ace's fingers shot out continuous small flames. Bang bang bang, the sudden flame instantly swallowed Dustless, igniting his head, and the raging fire burned. A person's head was burning with an inextinguishable fire, and there was no chance of survival. It should be working now. Ace heaved a sigh of relief. But suddenly, a ghostly low moan and blazing heat came, causing his relieved heart to immediately tense up again. How is this possible? Looking up, he saw a strange black flame on Dustless's head. The strange black flame swallowed Ace's flame. At first it was the human face, and almost instantly it swallowed and annihilated the crimson flame on Dustless's face, revealing his unscathed self. Chapter 666. The black flames were noble and evil, like the king of all fires, swallowing Ace's flames easily, as if he had met his natural enemy and had no power to fight back, overbearing and direct. It can devour my flames? Ace's tone was filled with surprise and doubt. He was quite surprised. The flame of flame fruit is famous in the world for its power. Ace said that it was the first time in his life that he had encountered a flame that could swallow him. It's really not simple. The vicissitudes of life sighed from Dustless's mouth. As his voice fell, the flames burning on his head also disappeared, revealing the intact Dustless. His skin and face were abnormally clean, as white and tender as before, and even his hair was not damaged at all. Flame attacks are useless against me. In fact, you lost at the beginning of this battle. Dustless looked at Ace and said coldly. His eyes widened, and the overbearing and unstoppable repulsion broke out again. Shinra Tensei. Boom. Although he used elementalization to escape at the first time, his whole body turned into a pile of flames and he was easily bounced back by the oncoming repulsion. The flames were all over the ground. Why didn't father kill him directly? Yushi blinked and asked curiously. Maybe he wants to use him, Fire Fist Ace, the value of using him is far greater than killing him. White Zetsu guessed in a deep voice, following Dustless for many years, he was not ignorant. The Whitebeard pirates are loyal and righteous, which is their unity and fatal weakness. Emotional bondage is always a double-edged sword, and it depends on how it is used. If it is not handled properly, it will naturally become a fatal poison. If I remember correctly, you were full of confidence just now, but now you are in a mess. Dustless said indifferently, his angular face without sadness or joy. The flames on the ground closed, and Ace's figure was recondensed, holding the iron box in his hand tightly. His eyes changed back and forth, and the hesitation on his face finally turned into determination. Your purpose should be for the dark fruit. Ace's sharp eyes looked straight at Dustless and he said affirmatively. The early bird gets the worm and the early worm gets eaten by the bird. Up until now, Ace could only admit that he was unlucky. Facing this cruel reality, Ace believed that he was no match for Dustless. However, he would never let Dustless get what he wanted. I'm indeed here for the dark fruit. What? Could it be that you want to give it to me? Stop dreaming. Even if you beg for mercy, I won't let you go. As Whitebeard's 2nd Division captain, you should understand your value. Dustless said bluntly. Ace only had a sneer on his face, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile, as if victory was already in his grasp. Are you still confident in yourself? Dustless frowned. He couldn't help but admire Ace's tenacity. At this point, even an ignorant child could tell who was the victor. You want it? Ace threw the iron box aside and took out the dark fruit with a strange purple pattern. The smile on the corner of his mouth became more obvious. Ace looked at Dustless playfully, and there was a hint of ridicule in his tone. He smiled and said, What do you think will happen if I eat it? Having said that, Ace's smile became wider. This was also a thought that suddenly flashed in his mind. The world said that a devil fruit ability user could only eat one, but no one knew what would happen if he ate two. Ace was gambling. If he could die, it would be best. This way, neither he nor the dark fruit would fall into Dustless's hands. If he didn't die, his strength would skyrocket. Therefore, he looked at Dustless expectantly. He thought that Dustless's face would turn blue, but what he saw was surprisingly calm. If you can eat it, you can try. Dustless looked at Ace calmly with a frozen expression. Hearing this, Ace's face darkened. Dustless' words seemed to mean that he didn't dare and didn't have the ability. It was as if the devil fruit in his hand could fly out of thin air. Flying into a rage out of humiliation, Ace directly brought it to his mouth. He's right. You really can't eat it. That thing is mine. A naive kid like you can't use the dark fruit's ability. Just give it to me, idiot. Unbridled mockery resounded through the boundless sky, followed by a gust of wind that swept past Ace. The dark, chilly wind made one's hair stand on end. Suddenly he felt that his hand was empty. The devil fruit that was about to be put into his mouth disappeared into thin air. He subconsciously opened his eyes. Bastard, which bastard stole my devil fruit? After a moment of sluggishness, Ace opened his eyes and his eyes spat fire. Because of his excessive anger, his already overdrawn physical strength erupted again. It was even more vast and infinite than before. He instinctively looked at Dustless, but saw that he had an expression that said it had nothing to do with him. He pointed to the figure hidden in the darkness on the left. Ace subconsciously forgot about it. Titch? Why are you here? Ace's expression changed drastically as he glared at him with an unfriendly expression. The blurry figure was clearly visible in the darkness. It had messy hair, an ugly face, uneven teeth, a protruding belly and a dense chest hair. In the whole world, other than Blackbeard Marshal D. Titch, no one else had such a sneaky look. Ace breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was one of his own. No, this guy had an ambush. How did he know that I traded the devil fruit with others on the island? Ace's relieved heart suddenly tightened. Realizing that something was wrong, Ace's face changed drastically. Tiske, the final winner is still me. Blackbeard smiled proudly, unusually arrogant. In fact, he had been secretly watching the battle for a long time. He was forced to come out when he saw Ace about to swallow the dark fruit. How did he know that you traded? Isn't that simple? Because the people you killed were originally my underlings. Blackbeard became even more pleased with himself when he spoke up to this point. Every devil fruit transaction he actually sent people to secretly observe. The fundamental purpose of his hiding in the Whitebeard pirates was to get the dark fruit. As for the filial piety of his father, he left it to his filial sons. Chapter 667. Looking at the dark fruit in his hand, Blackbeard was beaming with joy. His eyes were filled with greed. For today he had endured for 10 to 20 years and suffered countless humiliation. Until today his dream was realized. Blackbeard's eyes emitted the glow of a tiger and wolf. Even his breathing was unusually heavy. Immediately, he opened his large mouth and swallowed without any hesitation. He didn't even peel the skin. Dustless, Sama, why didn't you stop the kid? The dark fruit is gone again. White Zetsu was depressed. He was sure that Dustless had the ability to stop him, but he remained indifferent. Wuxia just kept silent and had a strange expression on his face. After a while, seeing that Blackbeard had completely swallowed the entire dark fruit, Dustless couldn't help but say, "How loud is Blackbeard's voice?" He swallowed the dark fruit directly and didn't choke to death. His words petrified everyone in an instant, including Fire Fist Ace's body. He looked at Dustless in a new light. This is really big. White Zetsu, who recovered, agreed. Everyone nodded secretly. They didn't expect Blackbeard to be able to swallow the dark fruit. It was rare for a monster to be able to swallow a devil fruit with a human body. Naturally, Blackbeard could hear the mockery in his words. He just sneered. "Keha. This power really makes one jump for joy," Blackbeard said as he danced with joy. His entire body was emitting black light as he carefully experienced the dark energy that was swimming in his body. Blackbeard's rough old face was fanatical, filled with excitement and joy. "Blackbeard, why are you here?" Ace questioned. His murderous intent was obvious. "It seems that you are an idiot." Blackbeard sneered. "I lurked in the Whitebeard pirates from the beginning for the dark fruit. You want me to work for Whitebeard? Do I look like such a kind person to you?" Blackbeard teased. His thick lips were raised high as if he was a villain who had achieved his goal. These words instantly aroused Ace's killing intent. Mirror fire, boom. Just as he was about to kill Blackbeard, an unexpected gunshot suddenly sounded. Ace's body had a terrible bloody hole out of thin air. Excellent marksmanship. It seems that Blackbeard hasn't done nothing these years. He has a reliable companion. His pupils narrowed as he thought of the Blackbeard pirate sniper. Dustless nodded. This bullet obviously has armament hockey, so it can penetrate Ace. Overconfident trash, you think you can kill me? Looking at Ace with disdain, Blackbeard laughed sinisterly. At the same time, he looked at Dustless with a cautious look. As the youngest and arguably the strongest admiral in marine history, his strength is beyond imagination. Being able to crush Ace like a bug explained everything. Moreover, looking at Wu Chen's appearance, it was obvious that he wasn't serious. Dark water. Seeing that Dustless didn't show any signs of interfering, a strong gravitational force shot out from his hand. It was abnormally powerful, and it easily sucked Ace over in an instant. Boom. Ruthlessly stepping on the ground, Blackbeard looked down at Ace. "How about it, my 2nd Division captain? If you are willing to be my subordinate, I don't mind letting you go." At the same time, he looked at Dustless with a hidden look, which obviously means that they can join hands to kill him. In this regard, Dustless turned a deaf ear and stood in place, completely ignoring both of them. Blackbeard was furious. He had already eaten the dark fruit, and this kid was still so arrogant. "In your dreams. I'd rather be that man's subordinate than you. You're even more despicable than him." Ace sneered and pointed at Wu Chen. Hearing this, Blackbeard's face turned green. You are looking for death, Blackbeard said with a fierce look in his eyes. There was a dark luster in his hand, and space and time showed signs of distortion. When he was about to kill Ace, a cold smile swept across his face, cruel and numbing. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish and send you to heaven, but it is too easy for you to die so quickly, Captain, Blackbeard said in a joking tone. The Whitebeard pirates pay attention to their companions. I can tell you that a few years ago, the death of the 4th Division Captain Thatch was caused by me. No. I encouraged him to steal the dark fruit. I didn't expect that fool to be so fearless for the safety of Whitebeard. What an idiot. Ah. Blackbeard laughed wildly, and his proud smile was full of endless arrogance. You bastard, I'll tear you to shreds. Hearing this, Ace's eyes were bloodshot and looked as if they were about to fall out. The Whitebeard pirates' principle of mutual love is deeply rooted in people's hearts. There is no distinction between the crew members, and they are all one of Whitebeard's sons. If you don't like me, you can come and kill me. You're just a mere rat. You should know when to stop. A ghostly voice suddenly resounded behind him. Blackbeard was suddenly stunned. He turned his head abruptly and looked at Wuxia, who was behind him with his hair standing on end. Looking at your silly look, I am upset. Do you really think you are in control of everything? Don't be so self-righteous. Dustless sneered. Lightspeed kick. Regardless of how the dull Blackbeard was, his calf covered with golden luster mercilessly hit Blackbeard's old face, and he suddenly flew out like a cannonball. The ground was pulled into a deep scorched gully. Idiot, you provoked Thatch to steal the dark fruit, but the source of the dark fruit is me. In the end, you are just a pawn in my calculations, idiot Blackbeard, hee hee. Chapter 668. Dustless smiled and looked at Blackbeard, who was like a stray dog, and his heart was particularly refreshed. This old guy is as smart as a mouse, and it's not easy to get rid of him. What did you say? Blackbeard roared, covering his burnt face. The power of the lightspeed kick was unusual, and it happened suddenly. There was no gap in Blackbeard's defense, and he was completely exposed under Dustless's eyes. In addition to being destroyed, he was still destroyed. You bastard, I will not let you go, absolutely. He got up from the ground in a sorry state and looked at his nose. Blackbeard's heart was cloudy. He didn't expect Wuxia to be so ruthless. His nose was kicked crooked. Don't look so hateful. No matter what, you ate the dark fruit. I thought you could withstand this blow, Wuxia said matter-of-factly, seemingly quite disappointed. Blackbeard's face was blue. If he could, he would never want to fight a Marine Admiral. After all, the strength of an Admiral is known to the world. Even Kizaru, Akainu, and Akiji are now among the top peerless masters. The one in front of him is even more shocking. He served as a Marine Admiral 10 years ago. His information is the oldest, and he rarely fights. Of course, it's because the people who have seen Dustless fight have disappeared. What do you mean, what does the dark fruit from 10 years ago have to do with you? Blackbeard asked gloomily, and at the same time, he was on guard against Dustless. He glared at Ace fiercely. As long as there was a chance, he would choose to kill him. Don't you understand? I thought you were smarter than others, but now it seems that I took it for granted. Dustless shook his head and sighed. In order to cause the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Biguman pirates, I contributed the dark fruit that I had been looking for several years, and you are responsible for appearing in my play. Dustless said calmly and seriously talked about the plan 10 years ago. In order to cause the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Biguman pirates, he spent a lot of effort. He was afraid that no one would be fooled. This is thanks to the witty Blackbeard, who recommended himself as the first male lead. Thinking of this, Dustless involuntarily gave a thumbs up to Blackbeard. His acting skills had reached perfection. First male lead. Hearing this, Blackbeard's rough face twitched and he stared at Dustless. If eyes could kill, Dustless would have been cut into pieces by now. The blood and chi in his chest roiled, and Blackbeard felt as if there was a huge boulder blocking his chest, almost suffocating him. Go to hell. Blackbeard stared at Wuxia and flashed a cruel smile. Although I don't know what kind of fruit you have, it seems to be very similar to Kizaru's. It would be disrespectful for me to refuse. After saying that, Blackbeard's body emitted a strange black gravitational force. Just like what you said before, nothing can escape the grasp of gravity. Blackbeard's palm suddenly turned pitch black and aimed at Wuxia, erupting with a strong gravitational force. Dark water. The powerful gravity pulled Dustless back in an instant. Blackbeard sneered, Then his right arm clenched into a fist and smashed towards Dustless's face without hesitation. Dustless just responded with a sneer. Shinra Tensei. At the moment of contact with Blackbeard, a strong repulsive force broke out and swallowed Blackbeard in an instant. Boom. Blackbeard, who was caught off guard, was instantly bounced away. The powerful force smashed several walls and fell into a deep pit with blood all over his body. Damn it, it hurts. Blackbeard screamed, his fat body fell to the ground and rolled, looking extremely painful. His 5 fingers were all wearing various gemstone rings, showing the temperament of a nouveau riche. Playing with gravity in front of me? I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Dustless rubbed his head and looked at the screaming Blackbeard with a headache. His face was full of helplessness. In front of Tensigan and Rinnegan, the dark fruit's gravity was not worth mentioning. When the power of Chibaku Tensei reached a certain level, it was enough to create the moon, and the repulsive force of Tensigan could control the moon. Compared with these two, the dark fruit was meaningless. In addition, the biggest disadvantage of the dark fruit was that it was the essence of darkness and could not be elementalized. The pain it suffered was also doubled, so it would be torturous to be hit by Shinra Tensei. This pain is nothing. If I get you, I can get your ability. This pain is not worth mentioning at all. Blackbeard stood up crazily, and his whole body was covered with monstrous darkness. It was vast and surging like a black dragon, instantly spreading and swallowing the entire island. Ka. On this unknown island, the surrounding buildings were swallowed in an instant, and all kinds of life were absorbed. Even the surface was pulled out, revealing a lifeless appearance. Everything was hit hard. In the face of gravity, everything in the world was so fragile. This was because Blackbeard was not proficient in it after eating the dark fruit. Ah. Even if you repent now, I will not let you go. Blackbeard laughed maniacally like a maniac. He raised his voice and exposed his belly. He did not care about Wuqian's feelings and laughed maniacally. Perhaps in his eyes, Dustless was a worthless corpse after he deprived him of his ability. After a few breaths, all the darkness disappeared. Liberate. Suddenly, with a roar from Blackbeard, a black pillar of light suddenly emerged from his body. All kinds of buildings and the earth that had been swallowed before were released and gathered into a large area. The terrifying momentum almost crushed the entire sky. With a wave of his hand, all of it smashed toward Dustless. Amazing momentum, no wonder you can be so confident. Raising his eyelids, he looked at Blackbeard with pity. Dustless obviously didn't mean what he said. Although he was praising Blackbeard, there was always a slight smile on his face. Then a black energy ball swept towards the sky. Chibaku Tensei. Chapter 669. Blackbeard's face was flushed, and even because of excessive excitement, his whole face was as red as a monkey's butt. He looked at the falling debris of various houses that almost covered the sky and gasped directly. This is the strongest and most evil devil fruit in history. Eee. Are you scared, silly? Are you kidding me? The wild laughter stopped and it was sharp. Blackbeard's pupils widened, and he looked up at the black bead in the sky. His excited heart felt like it was stepped on hundreds of times, and the pain was unforgettable. Boom, boom, boom. The majestic gravity that was enough to destroy the entire island rushed out from the black bead, and the whole earth trembled violently as if there was a magnitude 10 earthquake. The island is shaking. No, according to the frequency of the vibration, it seems like the entire world is shaking. Blackbeard exclaimed in disbelief. His old face was cold and he felt the boundless gravity. His hair stood on end and it almost tore his body into pieces. He looked at the ugly black sphere in the sky in horror, and his heart was in his throat. Blackbeard was different from Red Hair Shanks and Whitebeard. He was a real villain and his life was very important. Everything he did was based on his life. Of course, it was undeniable that he was indeed very successful. Even Whitebeard, who had lived for more than half a century, fell in the hands of Blackbeard. Blackbeard, you have been wrong from the beginning to the end. I am not Red Hair Shanks nor Whitebeard. You only look at me at the level of a general. Extremely ignorant. Dustless sneered, and he was full of contempt for Blackbeard. He and Red Hair or Whitebeard fought with their lives on the line. Only Blackbeard was opportunistic, and he would immediately slip away when he saw that the wind was not right. No wonder he did not have Haushiko-haki. Don't push your luck. Blackbeard warned with a black face, but he did not sound confident. So what if I push my luck? I still want to kick your nose and slap you until you are confused. His eyes shot out a cold light, and a burst of evil eye power jumped out from his eyes, and the void rippled. "Open your dog eyes and let me see what is real gravity." As soon as he finished speaking, Wuxia put his palms together and shouted loudly, "Ha!" The black pearls floating in the sky instantly increased their gravitational force by dozens of times. They became denser and wider, covering the entire island. "You bastard, what are you trying to do? Let me tell you, this island is finished. As a devil fruit user, you will become a drowned rat. Don't act rashly." Blackbeard quickly roared, "Also, aren't you a righteous marine? Are you going to kill everyone in this path?" Blackbeard thought that he was crazy enough, but he suddenly found that he was not half as crazy as Dustless. As a marine, he wanted all the people on this island to be buried with him. This should be the script for One Piece. You took the wrong script. At the same time, his vigilance against Dustless rose rapidly. Compared with the crazy old man Dustless, the latter is not even worthy of being an apprentice. People like Dustless who do things as he pleases are more difficult to deal with than anyone else. Of course I won't do it. Although I've killed countless people, I'm not a heartless person. It's just that you used to think highly of yourself and despise everything. But now your heart and soul are trembling. Human nature is really hard to predict. Tut tut. Wuxia smiled and joked. The shaking of the whole earth also stopped, but there was an unprecedented meteorite in the sky, completely condensed from the buildings of the entire town. The shadow coincides with the island. Is this really something that humans can do? Blackbeard's forehead was full of cold sweat, and he was full of fear. Staring at Dustless's immature face and thinking of his past experience, there are only two endings when encountering his enemies: either they are erased forever, or they are thrown into impel down with broken limbs. People who can do this kind of thing, Blackbeard can only think of one word: God. Ace, who was seriously injured and unconscious, was also stunned. The exaggerated meteorite filled the entire sky and occupied his entire field of vision. Maybe with just one order the island will collapse. Blackbeard, do you know the difference between human beings and God? Dustless seemed to see through Blackbeard's inner thoughts, and immediately stretched lazily and tiredly said. Hearing this, Blackbeard was stunned and said bluntly, "Difference? God can destroy the world with a flick of his finger, and normal human beings can only look at the sky from the bottom of a well." Blackbeard's face was full of unwillingness. Since ancient times, who didn't want to surpass this vast sky? It's just that no one can do it. Dustless just shook his finger and his eyes fell into memory. Suddenly he remembered the figure of Uchiha Madara in the last world. In fact, he already understood what a god is. The ambition of human beings is just to rule the paradise in front of them. Their vision is vulgar and narrow, but God uses everything in the world as a chessboard and chess pieces. This is the essential difference. Dustless said indifferently. Just like Kaguya, the goddess of Uno, she doesn't care about the so-called world at all, because she can create such a world in an instant. All human beings are her soldiers, but they are also chess pieces. Blackbeard carefully tasted the philosophy in it, and suddenly felt that Dustless's words were very reasonable. If you want to transcend this world, you can't be limited by the vulgar word world. Blackbeard suddenly felt particularly cheerful. One Piece and the King of the World are actually floating clouds. Eternal immortality is the way of the king, and for a time, his ambition soared. Staring at Dustless's smiling face, Blackbeard's smile instantly froze, and he realized that something was wrong. Are you saying that you treat everyone as a chess piece or a toy? With a black face, Blackbeard asked gloomily, thinking that Dustless was pointing out his bright path, but he didn't expect that he was taking the opportunity to ridicule him for overestimating himself. What do you think? With a smile on his face, Dustless shook his hand, and the floating meteorite in the sky also trembled. Some soil peeled off, not much, but all fell on Blackbeard's head. Chapter 670. Blackbeard's rough face was dull and fearful. He was originally a person who was afraid of death. Suddenly, he was shocked to find that there were countless particles and all kinds of dust hitting his head, and he subconsciously shook his head. A large piece of soil suddenly peeled off. His face became more and more ugly, his breathing was heavier than usual, and even the skin on the surface of his body trembled a little, and he involuntarily stepped back. Dustless's small hand shook, and the super-large meteorite in the sky also jumped. This indescribable oppression almost forced Blackbeard to collapse, and sweat kept falling like raindrops. I can't be caught by him so easily. My dream is not to just eat the dark fruit and report to the dark hell of Impel Down. It's too early. Blackbeard roared with his hand down, his tone was like a mad dog. A cornered dog will jump over the wall, and the crazy actions of Blackbeard were beyond imagination. Ah, it's really hard for you. Don't be so nervous. I said it won't fall on your head. After all, this is equivalent to a move of mutual destruction. Pointing to the meteorite, Dustless waved his hand and chuckled, indicating Blackbeard to rest assured. Your words can only deceive ghosts. Blackbeard's eyes widened, and after a muffled groan, a cruel and treacherous arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. His body suddenly plunged into darkness and swallowed him in an instant. Immediately, the black mist suddenly disappeared, and Blackbeard himself also dissipated. Ah, the dark fruit has this ability? Dustless's calm eyes splashed with ripples, and he was slightly surprised. He had never heard that the dark fruit had such a strange and unpredictable ability. He actually used the dark fruit to swallow Blackbeard himself. However, it's just a flashy trick. Observation Hockey spread out and took in the wind and grass around him. Dustless suddenly chuckled casually, and the teasing laughter was obviously full of sarcasm and ridicule. The void inevitably swayed with slight ripples. Even if the concealment was seamless, it was still tantamount to a fool's dream to escape from Dustless's perception. Covering up will only increase vulnerability and make oneself look more pale and powerless. This is an evasion in the face of cruel reality. Whiz. A black iron rod condensed in his hand in an instant, and he immediately turned and threw it out with all his strength. How did this guy find me? Blackbeard was shocked and quickly revealed his physical body. Although this black iron rod looked ordinary, it gave him goosebumps. Then he activated the dark fruit's ability without hesitation. Dark water. There was a distortion in the void, and a black whirlpool suddenly appeared and swallowed the black iron rod in an instant. He actually swallowed yin-yang release. This is actually no different from an alternative space ninjutsu. Dustless secretly nodded and guessed. Release. With a loud shout, a thick black darkness suddenly emerged from Blackbeard's body. A black iron staff darted out from within, aiming at Dustless. Idiot. You want to use my ability to defeat me? You're still dreaming. Dustless leaped into the air and casually kicked away the iron rod that was transformed from the yin-yang escape. To others, the yin-yang escape was something that could not be touched. It had no effect on him at all. The focus of his line of sight turned to Blackbeard's body. His pupils were enlarged and there were ripples in his eyes. There was a faint black irregular flame jumping. Amaterasu. Along with Dustless's voice falling, Blackbeard's body suddenly flashed with a black monstrous flame. The biggest disadvantage of the dark fruit was that it could not be elementalized. It was dark itself, so it could not be elementalized like other natural ability users. But it hurts so much. What the hell is this? Blackbeard's face was filled with astonishment as he howled in pain. His screams of pain were torturous. As time passed, his screams became sharper and sharper. He was filled with despair towards his fate. He let out a low roar, filled with unprecedented hatred towards Dustless. Get out of my way, how can I be burned by this thing? The tortured Blackbeard waved his hand, and endless darkness broke out of his body and directly swallowed the burning Amaterasu. Blackbeard stood up awkwardly, and there was a burnt stench all over his body. Where did this roasted pig come from? It's so disgusting. Would anyone eat it? Dustless smiled as he looked at Blackbeard, who was almost burnt to charcoal. Blackbeard was unmoved. His eyes were about to crack, and then he smiled cruelly. Then I'll return it to you. Enjoy it. Release. The ugly body once again erupted with a black pillar that shot into the sky. The swallowed Amaterasu was released and instantly ignited Dustless's body. You idiot, you don't seem to understand human language. I already said that my attack doesn't work on me, but against others, it's a natural enemy. Dustless looked at Blackbeard hopelessly. His body suddenly erupted with a strong devouring force, and it was like a black hole. It swallowed the Amaterasu fire in an instant. He could absorb all techniques. So what? Your attack doesn't work on me. Any attack can be absorbed by me. This is the power of the dark fruit. Ordinary people can't understand it. Blackbeard smiled with exultation. The dark fruit was the most ferocious devil fruit in history. When its power was used to the limit, it was not inferior to Whitebeard's tremor fruit. It was even more comprehensive in some aspects. The confidence in his words made people involuntarily convinced. It seemed that everything would play out as he predicted, and there was no escape from Blackbeard's control. Is that so? Then for the next move you have to pay attention. Don't get killed. Sometimes it's extremely difficult to control strength. In short, I'll try to suppress it as much as possible like before. His body suddenly flashed with an emerald brilliance, and an unprecedented storm was brewing in Dustless's hand. Chapter 671. The violent hurricane was biting cold. Even the floating meteorites in the sky were rotating with the wind speed, constantly trembling. Blackbeard felt a burst of fear when he saw this. He was afraid that Dustless's technique was not good enough and he would be implicated. It's funny that such a cowardly person could become one of the Jianghu, 4 emperors, in the future. Sometimes the goddess of fate is really blind. Dustless couldn't help but complain. Blackbeard didn't care. He sneered at the idea of risking one's life. Only by doing so could one set foot on the top. The so-called dignity was like human clothes. When one didn't wear it, it didn't matter. At most, one would be mocked by others. But when one wore it, Blackbeard thought it was just a facade. The emerald light gradually enveloped Wu Chen's entire body. His entire body emitted a noble luster that couldn't be offended. He was so lofty that Blackbeard could only look up to him. You think you've turned the tables? It's not too late to dream now. Dustless, who had completely entered the Tensigan chakra mode, looked at him coldly. This guy was too arrogant. As long as he deliberately exposed a flaw to let him take advantage of him, he would immediately start to raise his nose to the sky. Whoosh! Between his hands, a hurricane was spinning rapidly. The hurricane was not large, about the size of Dustless's arm, but this awe-inspiring hurricane was extremely domineering. Damn it! You made me so scared. Grandpa Tich can handle such a ridiculous trick without running. Blackbeard's old face suddenly became arrogant, and he sneered at Dustless. However, before he could be proud of himself, a crimson halo enveloped him in the next second. Fire ring, pillar of fire. Blackbeard's face was dull and he instinctively looked up. Surrounded by the cylindrical flame halo, the temperature around him began to rise rapidly. Flame? Looking at the flame falling from the sky, Blackbeard was stunned. Boom. The pillar of light condensed on Blackbeard's body suddenly exploded, and the earth trembled. The flame, full of majestic destructive power, was unstoppable, annihilating Blackbeard in an unstoppable manner. Looking over, it was Fire Fist Ace who launched the sneak attack. This guy is quite interesting. Dustless's eyes lit up. His view of Ace had also changed. The reason why he hadn't launched an attack was because he had sensed Ace's awakening and knew that this guy was preparing a big move. He originally thought that he would sneak an attack on Dustless, but he didn't expect that his target would be Blackbeard. Perhaps compared to the despicable and shameless Blackbeard, Dustless was much kinder. I really hope to see the scene of you being beaten until you look for your teeth on the ground. Unfortunately, I have already reached my limit, Ace said in a haggard manner. Immediately, he unwillingly shut his eyes. Taking a closer look, there was a deep red bloody hole in Ace's abdomen. It was almost pierced through. It was already a miracle that he was able to hold on until now. Most likely he would pass away soon. Dustless frowned and looked at White Zhu. Obviously he couldn't let the kid die peacefully. It wasn't that he was suddenly kind-hearted and thought that he would have compassion for Ace by suddenly helping him. Wu Chen wasn't the kind of person who would practice medicine to help the world. It was just that Ace who was alive was more valuable than him who was dead. White Zhu nodded, indicating that there was no problem. At the same time, the pillar of flame that shrouded Blackbeard's body gradually dissipated, revealing Blackbeard who was black all over. His hair was all burned. Fortunately, I already had a defense. Otherwise, I really would have lost my combat power. It's not impossible to be killed. Blackbeard rejoiced after surviving a disaster. Taking a closer look, he had already become bald and his whole body was in tatters. Ha! You deserve it, you idiot. Staring at the unconscious and dying Ace, Blackbeard laughed wildly. His hatred for Ace disappeared in an instant. Anyway, there was no need to argue with a dead person. However, in the next second, his eyes widened strangely, and the refracted gaze was full of disbelief. White Zhu walked to Ace's side and looked at his wound. He didn't hesitate to cut off his right arm and put it into Ace's bloody abdomen. The white arm melted like liquid in an instant. This guy is surrounded by alien creatures. Blackbeard whispered to himself. Immediately, something even more unbelievable happened. The mysterious white liquid circled around Ace's eroded chest, and it had the magical power of decay. The wound, which was damaged by the bullet with armament hockey, slowly healed. Are you kidding me? How could this happen? Blackbeard roared in shock with a sharp tone. At the same time, his eyes narrowed and the light from his eyes was extremely dangerous. His eyes were locked on White Zhu, and he couldn't wait to rub him into his body. White Zhu couldn't help but have goosebumps. Are you kidding? Making a fuss out of nothing. Bringing the dead back to life is merely a thought from me. It's just that this brat doesn't have the chance to enjoy this kind of treatment, Dustless said nonchalantly. Resurrection, not reincarnation, this is the essence of Rinnegan. If you kneel and beg for mercy, lie down and shout, I am a roasted pig, 3 times. I will reluctantly let you go. Dustless looked at Blackbeard, who was exuding a strange smell. At the same time, the power of the arm-sized Takenabu in his hand was reduced. Fuck, you are dreaming. Blackbeard roared sharply, his teeth were almost broken and blood was visible to the naked eye. He was afraid of death and he could give up all dignity in order to live, but he couldn't be tortured by Dustless. Sometimes even a stray dog wants human rights. The negotiation failed in this case. I wish you can survive. The Takenabu, which was about to dissipate, enlarged again and always maintained the size of an arm. It looked quite pale and weak. Just with this? Come at me, I promise I won't run. Blackbeard sneered. Dustless's face was full of ridicule and he couldn't help but shake his head. The people in this world seemed to be a bit narrow-minded, including Whitebeard. Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Chapter 672. Along with Dustless's lonely voice, the entire world fell silent. The small tornado in his hand whizzed out and instantly enlarged. The high-speed rotation of the biting cold wind caused the hurricane to be as sharp as a knife. Those who were affected by it would have a shocking blood-red knife scar on their body. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, until finally, it turned into a boundless apocalyptic storm. Only then did it stop evolving. The exaggerated momentum covered the sky and covered the sun. As for Blackbeard, he was already petrified. Poochie, the piercing pain caused Blackbeard's expression to change. He recovered from his daze and silently looked at the apocalyptic hurricane that was sweeping towards him. He opened his mouth but tactfully closed it. Even if he knelt down and shouted, I, Blackbeard, am a roasted pig 3 times, Dustless would not let him go. When the divine arrow was released, there was no possibility of retracting it. Retreat quickly. Blackbeard's expression was decisive as he shouted at his companions in the distance. Immediately he ran away without mercy. Staying here to be dismembered by the storm of swords was a stupid thing that only an idiot would do. Using the muscles on his legs to the limit, Blackbeard turned around and ran. Naive. I told you before to be tactful, but you are not tactful. Facing such a desperate situation, you can only blame yourself. You can't blame others. Dustless's mouth was suffused with a cold light as he sneered. Opportunities were given to those who were prepared. As for those who let go of the opportunity, whoosh whoosh whoosh, a person's speed was always limited. Compared to the violent wind, Blackbeard's crooked pace was not just a little bit slower. Under this situation, it was getting closer and closer to Blackbeard. Due to being too close, Blackbeard could even feel the terrifying wind and waves engulfing him. If he was caught in this extremely dense storm of swords, he would end up as a pile of minced meat. Thinking of this scene, Blackbeard's heart was thumping, as if it was going to burst out of his stomach. Want to kill me? Dream on, my dream will not be defeated by a savage demon like you. His body suddenly stopped. Blackbeard turned around and shouted loudly, trying to encourage himself and stabilize his fear. Facing death, especially the tragic death of being minced, no matter who it was, they would not be able to let it go. Dark water. A deep black hole appeared in his hand. It was different from before. Blackbeard's face was fierce as he clenched his teeth and persisted. He seemed to be struggling. This strange and irregular black hole had infinite gravitational force. The other side came from the abyss of the universe and could crush everything in the world. Ka. After a while, the black hole in Blackbeard's hand began to expand, violently pulling at the surrounding space, constantly expanding. In just the blink of an eye, it was the size of an adult human. However, this was only the beginning. The black hole condensed in his hand gradually left Blackbeard's palm and slowly rose. When it was several dozen meters above the ground, the gravitational force became several dozen times stronger. It was the same for the range. Boundless gravitational force shot out from the black hole. At this moment, space, air, and even time were all twisted and pulled over, forcibly stuffed into the black hole. The blade storm formed by the invincible silver wheel reincarnation explosion was also sucked over. Get in there. Blackbeard said with a sinister smile. Being chased away by Wu Qin like a rabbit, he had long suppressed a bellyful of resentment. Now that he could slap Wu Qin's face and destroy his trick, Blackbeard's heart was as sweet as eating honey. He was in high spirits and couldn't help but show a hearty smile. It was just that with his burned bald head it was extremely funny. Boom boom boom, the black hole continued to expand. The black gravitational force from it was like an ancient beast. As long as one entered it they would not be able to escape. Creatures and non-creatures were no exception. Ah. It seems that the final winner is still me, Dichi. Ah. Blackbeard waved his hands excitedly and laughed heartily. Victory is in hand? That's all it takes to make you overestimate yourself? Pathetic. Dustless shook his head helplessly. The power of the Tensigan in his right eye went berserk. He suddenly raised his right hand and aimed at the large black hole in the sky. The corner of his mouth curled into a sneer. The repulsive and gravitational forces of the Tensigan are enough to control the moon. I wonder what your dark fruit can do? I'm looking forward to it. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless struck out with an extremely powerful repulsive force from his palm. It swept out like a monstrous wave, covering an area of 5 kilometers. Bang! Ka. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, the condensed black hole shattered like a mirror exploding. The black hole could not retaliate at all, it was so weak that it was not even worth mentioning. The silver wheel reincarnation explosion, that had been gradually weakened and swallowed was released again. Moreover, due to the support of this repulsive force, it instantly moved forward dozens of meters and swallowed the dumbfounded Blackbeard. Puchi. Ouch, it hurts so much. This hatred, I will definitely make you pay me back 100 times over. In the next few seconds, Blackbeard, who was being devoured, screamed again and again. His screams were even worse than that of a pig being slaughtered. Occasionally he would shout hysterically about taking revenge on Dustless. The latter, on the other hand, was a laughing matter. Whether or not he could survive was already a problem, let alone taking revenge. The rotating hurricane only lasted for a few seconds, but its frequency was extremely high. It could cut dozens or even hundreds of times per second. What would happen to Blackbeard after being devoured for a few seconds was self-evident. Stupid man, a mere floating monster trying to shake the towering ancient tree with the power of an ant, this is what will happen to him. Your ignorance has caused a lot of harm. This world is actually filled with people like you. Dustless muttered to himself. As soon as the words fell, the raging of the silver wheel reincarnation explosion also stopped, and the trembling island also stopped. The devastated island finally withstood the final blow. Although it was already crumbling, and there was the possibility of it collapsing at any time. The pungent smell of blood came head-on. Looking closely, Blackbeard was lying in a pool of blood all over his body. The shocking wound was clearly visible, and his breath was so weak that it could be ignored. Chapter 673. Blackbeard lay on the ground half dead, motionless. His body was badly mutilated, and the long purple scars on his back were unbearable to look at. These horrifying scars were all over his body. That big bearded man can't be dead, right? If he's dead then how can we play? It's all Father's fault. After a while little Yushi saw that Blackbeard refused to stand up no matter what, and couldn't help but whisper. Although her voice was as soft as a mosquito's, everyone present was an expert, and her voice clearly fell into everyone's ears. This little girl. Who did she get her temperament from? It's most likely Huey. Dustless couldn't help but ridicule in his heart. His gaze involuntarily looked at Blackbeard, fearing that this brat would suddenly stand up after hearing Yushi's complaints. These words were obviously teasing Blackbeard like a toy, and anyone would be incomparably depressed. Come here, Yushi. Dustless waved at Yushi. Nodding her head obediently, Yushi took light steps and cheerfully jumped over. The moment she passed by Blackbeard, Blackbeard's originally lifeless body suddenly moved. His rough hands seemed to be able to extend without limit, easily grabbing Yushi's uniform and nimbly pulling out the gun in his hand and aiming it at Yushi's temple. This sudden scene made Dustless and White Zoo stunned. Bastard Blackbeard, if you don't want to be dismembered into pieces, quickly let go of Miss. White Zoo roared with overflowing killing intent. Kiki, do you think I'm an idiot? If I really let go of this shield, then I'll be dismembered into pieces just like just now. Ouch. It hurts so much. Along with the twisting of his body, there was suddenly a piercing pain that penetrated deep into his bones. Blackbeard's face was as white as paper from the pain, and his whole body uncontrollably broke out in cold sweat. His eyes were filled with resentment, and he stared at Dustless with cold eyes. If looks could kill, Dustless would have already become a human stick. You can actually stand up. It seems that your body structure is really different from a normal human's. Circling around the wounds all over Blackbeard's body, Dustless thoughtfully said. Her tone was light and gentle, giving people the feeling that she was taking a leisurely stroll in the afternoon. She did not sound anxious at all after her daughter was kidnapped. Your daughter is in my hands. You should be worried about her, not my body structure. If you don't want a bullet to open a bloody hole in her head, you better be obedient, Mr. Marine Admiral. Blackbeard warned with a hoarse voice. His sharp tone carried complacency and carefreeness. The battle had already reached this stage, yet he had finally turned the tables. Even though his methods were extremely despicable, he didn't care. It was enough to survive. Hearing this, Dustless shrugged and took a few steps back. Motherf *her, no matter what, you are still a captive. Hurry up and cry for me. Looking at the devilish brat, Blackbeard's head was burning with anger. As a hostage, she should behave like a hostage. Even if she couldn't cry, she shouldn't be as excited as she was now, as if she had been injected with chicken blood. Woo woo woo, she squeezed out 2 drops of sparkling tears from the corners of her eyes as she sobbed. Dustless-sama, you should have the ability to save Mississippi. Why haven't you done it yet? White Zetsu urged. No matter how strong Blackbeard was, he was not Dustless's opponent. Even if Blackbeard was now 5 times or 10 times stronger, wanting to kill Dustless was only a fairy tale story. White Zetsu was also convinced that with Dustless's strength, he could definitely save Yushi easily. This little girl. What did Kagaya teach her over the years? Dustless just sighed to himself. The 2 drops of sparkling and translucent tears that fell to the ground were naturally seen by Wu Chen's eyes. Looking up, he saw Yushi's pair of small hands rubbing her big watery eyes, coupled with her sobbing. It was a grief-stricken appearance. The only thing that was not complimentary was that even if the corners of her mouth were perfectly concealed, Dustless could still vaguely see Yushi's bright smile as if she had won a prize. Her acting was really clumsy, but her back was facing Blackbeard and her hands were covering, so Blackbeard didn't see it for the time being. Little Yushi obviously did it on purpose. Jia. Since you guys are so tactful, I will leave, see you later. Seeing Dustless and White Zetsu tactfully take a few steps back, Blackbeard laughed unscrupulously. His tone was full of joy of surviving a disaster. His pupils dilated, the corner of his eyes stopped at Dustless's body, as if he wanted to engrave his face in his heart forever and take it back 100 times in the future. Jia, maybe I don't have to wait, I will immediately throw his daughter into the sea to feed the fish. Blackbeard laughed cruelly in his heart. He hated Dustless to the bone and wanted to drink his blood and eat his flesh. As long as he was sure that he could escape from Dustless's trap, he would kill his enemy's daughter. And hurt Yushi in the most cruel way. Dustless-sama, don't worry, that little girl did it on purpose. Waving his hand, Dustless interrupted White Zetsu's speech, staring at the gradually dissipating black shadow. He casually found a big stone and sat down, his expression indifferent and calm. He casually pulled up a green grass from the ground and held it in his mouth. When Yushi comes back, remember to wake me up, I will sleep first, White Zetsu. Finished speaking, Dustless didn't wait for White Zetsu to react and fell into a nap, causing White Zetsu's mouth to twitch, but then he thought about it and felt relieved. Dustless could give him so many strange abilities. Yushi is a direct descendant of Dustless. Even if her battle strength was not strong, she would have countless strange abilities to defend herself. Kidnapping Yushi, wanting to use her to leave safely, this was completely Blackbeard's wishful thinking. In reality, he was asking for trouble. Chapter 674. Dustless was lying comfortably on a large stone. His breathing was unusually calm and clear. His breathing was very regular and natural. He was really not worried about Yushi. After a while, he opened his eyes and carefully observed the stars in the sky. A playful smile appeared on his face. He had enough confidence in Yushi. Of course, he was not referring to Yushi's strength. Although she inherited the bloodline of Dustless and Kagaya, this little girl's strength was average. Most of the reason was that she refused to learn. Yin didn't care about that. Only her ability to escape was taught by Dustless. Dustless-sama, the relationship between Straw Hat Luffy and Pirate Hunter Zoro has changed completely. White Zetsu said without warning. The quiet night was broken by him. At this time the sky was dark and the sea in the distance was turbulent, setting off monstrous waves. Deep in the sea, there seemed to be prehistoric beasts rolling and stirring the sea. The whole sea was restless. Seeing this scene, Dustless couldn't help but frown. His eyes subconsciously looked at the sea where Blackbeard had escaped. Straw Hat Luffy. When did that kid hook up with Roland Zoro? Dustless, who recovered, was puzzled. If he didn't guess wrong, the two of them had met for some time, and it was not the island where he had sent Luffy off the ship. White Zetsu had expected this and told Dustless all the details of the matter. Unintentionally planted willows and willows grow. Perhaps this is fate. After listening to White Zetsu's explanation, Dustless nodded and sighed with emotion. Everyone's fate was destined to be inextricably linked. Even if they were in different corners of the sky, they would still meet. What happened after that? What happened to those two brats? According to my guess, their strengths weren't on par with each other. The final outcome should be that both sides suffered injuries, and the victor couldn't be decided. Wu Qin said with a calm expression. Hearing this, White Zu shook his head. Dustless had guessed wrong. Luffy and Swallow had decided on a victor. Straw Hat Luffy won. Of course, after the two of them fought for several hours, Zoro was moved by Luffy's will and was willing to join his pirate regiment. However, the two of them seemed to be born unlucky. The raft that they painstakingly built was eroded by the waves in less than half a day. White Zetsu shrugged helplessly. Dustless was silent. He did not intend to disturb Luffy's plan for the time being. Sailing required many companions, and it was impossible to explore the new world with only Luffy and Zoro. What are you guys planning? Luffy is still young, he has no value to you. Fire Fist Ace opened his eyes with difficulty. His freckled face was haggard and dispirited, as if he had aged several decades. His voice was unprecedentedly weak. Due to Zetsu's emergency treatment, Fire Fist Ace had been pulled back from the King of Hell, temporarily saving his life. Chess pieces are not divided into big and small. Those who can use the steel blade are often those who are not in the mainstream. Dustless explained while shaking his finger. Dustless observed Ace's body turning, and then looked as far as his eyes could see. In a trance he saw Blackbeard fleeing in panic. Do you already feel regret? Serves you right. That's right, people like Titch, releasing a tiger back to the mountain is indeed a big problem. Ace used all his strength to mock Dustless. Only in this way would he be able to redeem his lost heart. Releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Nonsense, don't be a smartass. Dustless looked down at Ace, who was lying on the ground, and then smiled. I might as well tell you, I have been thinking of a reasonable way to let Blackbeard go without being suspected. I thought for a long time, but I didn't expect him to take the initiative to kidnap Moon Shi and escape. In fact, this is in line with my plan. Dustless told the truth. The 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates is mysteriously missing. Whitebeard is bound to be crazy looking for you. Unfortunately, no one knows that you fell into my hands. Blackbeard won't say it and I won't say it either. What's your goal? Ace asked with an ashen face. As Dustless said, Blackbeard will never speak. For the time being, he still needs to lurk in the Whitebeard Pirates to find a place to hide from the wind, and no one else knows about this incident. If Dustless doesn't say it, only ghosts in the world will know. Staring at the battered and exhausted Ace, Wu Chen's eyes shot out a cold light. One day in the future when you recover, I will send you to Sengoku. Ace looked sluggish and looked at Dustless incredulously. He was not an idiot. Of course he understood what it meant. His face changed in an instant and he had guessed what his purpose was. From the beginning, your purpose was not for me to get the so-called dark fruit, but for the entire Whitebeard Pirates. His pupils shrank, Ace trembled, and his back was cold. As compared to you just now, you are much more enlightened now. Dustless nodded and his face was fierce. I know Sengoku's temperament. He will execute you publicly to lure the Whitebeard Pirates. In the future, Ace will be sent to Sengoku after he recovers from his injuries. Sengoku will definitely announce the news as soon as possible, and then set up an inescapable net to wait for the Whitebeard Pirates. This is also the script of the War of the Best, that Dustless planned a long time ago. No wonder you will leave me alive. Ace's eyes were full of despair. As the son of Whitebeard, he naturally understood the character of the latter. He valued his son as his own, and when the time comes, he will desperately kill the Marine headquarters. You will definitely cause a war by doing this, which is not good for the Marine. Is advised. Dustless's dark eyes jumped with a deep light, and there seemed to be a black mist coming out of his eyes. At this moment he was like a demon in human skin, extremely gloomy and terrible. No good? It's true, but as long as I can destroy this world it doesn't matter. Chapter 675. Ace's eyes widened as he looked incredulously at the smiling Dustless. As a Marine Admiral, not only did he not choose to maintain the order of the world, but he also hoped that the world would collapse as soon as possible. It would be strange if he was not shocked. His cold eyes looked straight at Dustless's dead eyes, and the fire of ambition reflected in his eyes made Ace's eyes feel stinging. The burning flame was enough to swallow the whole world. Blackbeard thinks he's smart. Well, he deserves to be so unlucky. He wants to swallow the whole world with ambition, but he doesn't want to pay anything. It's impossible and unrealistic. Dustless whispered. There is no such thing as a free pie in the sky. A few years ago, the dark fruit that provoked the Whitebeard pirates and the Bigumamu pirates. It was just a bait I put out. I didn't expect it to really cause a war between the two evil fishes. Dustless sighed. The temptation of some devil fruits in this world is so great that it can cause a war between the Jianghu, 4 emperors. After all, Doflamingo's flamingo fruit plagued countless pirates in the palm of his hand. The dark fruit, which is far more powerful than the flamingo fruit, is a deadly poison. Even if the Marine headquarters publicly executes me, my father will not be fooled. He is not an idiot. Ace said, but he lacked confidence, giving people a feeling of self-deception. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled silently. This is not something you should think about. Sometimes, he is such an idiot. Dustless said sarcastically. You don't have to worry about other things as long as he is white and fat, and then welcome a death that is as eye-catching as your father's. In this world, only you and your father can enjoy it, no one else. Dustless said straightforwardly. People who can be publicly executed are rare, especially in front of the whole world live broadcast. This kind of high-standard death is only the Pirate King and his son. You shut up, he is not my father. Like a cat whose tail was stepped on, Ace lost his calm and roared. For the Pirate King Joel D. Roger, he has a bone-deep disgust and hatred. That's your business. You have the bloodline of One Piece. That's a fact. Otherwise, do you really think you're that valuable? Stop lying to yourself, Dustless said in disdain. He couldn't help but feel speechless for this kid. No matter how bad Roger was, he was still doing much better than Fire Fist Ace. At the very least, he wouldn't have been publicly executed, become the prey of others' schemes, and drag others down with him. The more Ace criticized Roger, the more disdainful Dustless felt. In his opinion, this was just an escape in disguise. Early in the morning of the next day, the morning breeze blew and the sun shone brightly for thousands of kilometers. The violent storm that had overturned rivers and seas had finally stopped, and the tranquility of the past was restored once more. On the empty sea, a laughing raft was clearly visible. Brat, get over here. Sitting on the raft without a care for his image, Blackbeard's expression was so ugly that it could drip water. Staring at Yushi in front of him, his heart was devastated and hit. From time to time, there would be all kinds of creatures on the bottom of the sea. Yushi would threaten Blackbeard to catch them. Otherwise, she would immediately jump into the sea and commit suicide. At first, Blackbeard thought she was joking. What does a kid know about suicide? He ignored her. Unexpectedly, Yushi really jumped. On the spot, Blackbeard was so scared that he almost lost control of his bladder. For the descendant of his enemy, Blackbeard naturally held hatred. He couldn't wait to kill her, but he couldn't die now. At least he had to escape from Dustless's capture. After spending a lot of effort, Blackbeard was able to get Yushi out. After all, he still had to rely on her to save his life. If she died, she might be caught by Dustless and torn into pieces. What are you doing, Big Beard? Yushi blinked and asked, her eyes flashing cunningly. Hearing this, Blackbeard's mouth twitched, and an unprecedented grievance rose in his heart. He suddenly realized that kidnapping Yushi was a wrong choice. Now he realized that it was not him who kidnapped Yushi, but himself who was kidnapped by Yushi. Give me something to eat. After a moment of hesitation, Blackbeard took out the remaining iron box, which looked like compressed food, and handed it to Yushi. Although he wanted to starve her, he still hoped that Yushi would survive. I don't want to eat this kind of thing, I want to eat a big meal. Yushi threw it back to Blackbeard. Blackbeard's old face shot out a murderous look. He warned with a murderous look, Brat, you better be sensible, otherwise I will tear you to pieces and then take a little bit to feed the pirates. Blackbeard's eyes flashed with a terrifying light, as if he was a ghost, indicating that he was not joking. You won't. If you do that, you will die. Such a simple raft will attract pirates, and it will be destroyed by large sea kings in an instant. You are a devil fruit user, you should understand the reason. Yushi smiled calmly. The fate of a devil fruit user who falls into the sea is self-evident and known to the world. You are smart? Shuangyang stared at Yushi incredulously and couldn't help but secretly nod. It was rare for a young girl to know so much. She was about to praise her when she suddenly realized that she was currently a hostage. Bastard, you better not give me an inch and take a mile. If you anger me, I will definitely kill you. Blackbeard warned fiercely. Obviously, he kidnapped Yushi, but Blackbeard felt like he was waiting for a living ancestor. Blackbeard's face was black, and his face was twitching slightly. His embarrassed and angry appearance was extremely comical. A strange emotion that he had never felt before spread from the bottom of his heart. This was the first time in his life that he had felt so helpless, and was completely taken advantage of. Chapter 676. Blackbeard felt uncomfortable all over. Now it's more like being tied up. It's particularly uncomfortable. Even when he breathes, he feels an unprecedented discomfort. All in all, everything has changed. Now Blackbeard drank a stomach full of ink. He can only pinch his nose and swear that after returning to the Whitebeard pirates, he will make Dustless look good. Remember this clearly. You're just a hostage. There's nothing special about you, Blackbeard said coldly with a cold look in his eyes. He couldn't help but feel a burst of anger. It was fine that he was beaten up by Wuxia. That was because he wasn't skilled enough and couldn't blame others. However, this little girl in front of him was ordering him around like a princess. How could Blackbeard's arrogant self-esteem stand it? As a hostage, he can't forget his duty. Of course I know this, Big Beard. Yushi nodded her head in agreement, but the corners of her eyes revealed a disapproving craftiness. It's best if you know what's good for you. Seeing this, Blackbeard was silent. This little girl was very eloquent. Blackbeard didn't think that his eloquence would be better than Yushi. After all, most pirates are rough men. Ouch, it hurts so much. Inadvertently touching the wounds all over his body, Blackbeard's face suddenly turned pale and he screamed in pain. This tragic scream made people's scalp numb. Seeing you in so much pain, I don't mind helping you once. A heavenly voice that could not bear Blackbeard's pain sounded out, carrying endless compassion and kindness. Blackbeard, who was rolling around in pain, suddenly stopped, and his eyes subconsciously looked over. Just by you. Staring at Yushi, Blackbeard sneered, full of suspicion. If it was an ordinary passerby, Blackbeard can choose to reluctantly believe it. If the daughter of his enemy chooses to help him at all costs, Blackbeard won't believe it. What's more, he doesn't think Yushi has that ability. The way White Zetsu treats Fire Fist Ace. In fact, I can do it too, and I'm more familiar with it than him. Yushi's thin lips opened and whispered. White Zetsu. Blackbeard was stunned at first, then he remembered Fire Fist Ace who was brought back from hell. His eyes flashed with greed. For White Zetsu's magical power, he saw it in his eyes and remembered it in his heart. If possible, Blackbeard wanted to kidnap Zetsu to be the ship's doctor. In the end, he is just a product created by my father. What he learned can only be considered as superficial knowledge, but I have inherited most of my father and mother's abilities compared to him, although my skills are not exquisite. Yushi said confidently as she patted her chest. Even so, it couldn't dispel the doubts in Blackbeard's heart. It was impossible for him to be so idiotic as to bet his life on the little brat. This was no different from setting himself on fire. However, these words reminded him of something. If his daughter can be abducted to my ship and become a pirate, haha. Thinking of this, Blackbeard couldn't help but laugh. Not only could he take revenge on Dustless, but he could also solve the problem of the ship's doctor, killing two birds with one stone. Since you can, I'll let you treat me once. You better not lie to me, otherwise, humph. Staring at Yushi's delicate face, Blackbeard finally made up his mind. As a reward, I will let you leave safe and sound. If you violate this oath, you will be struck by lightning. Blackbeard patted his belly, giving off a crisp sound as he vowed solemnly. His voice seemed to be filled with magic, causing others to involuntarily believe him. At the same time, dozens of meters below the sea, a sea king slowly moved forward. Its eyes were strange three-tomo Sharingan. Obviously, it has been forcibly controlled by Dustless to eavesdrop on the traces of Blackbeard and Yushi. Yushi, who hadn't returned for a night, still caused Dustless to worry. Serves you right. Your daughter was kidnapped by Titch. She's dead for sure. Ace taunted. He took the opportunity to add insult to injury. White Zetsu's face was cold when he heard this, and he directly went up with a heavy kick. Boom. Even though Baiju's attack power was strong, his strength was far beyond that of a normal human. He kicked Ace's face until it bled profusely. Just him? The simple and casual words were full of confidence, and at the same time full of contempt for Blackbeard. Dustless calmly said, Yushi inherited the body characteristics of me and Kagaya, and has the ability to repair without limit. It's difficult for Blackbeard to kill her. Looking at the unwilling Ace with pity and sympathy, Dustless didn't even have the mood to ridicule him and waited quietly. On the slowly drifting raft. Looking carefully, Blackbeard is no longer the same as before. His whole body has recovered, his whole body is bright and his face is red. Blackbeard is no longer as depressed as before, and his whole body is full of vitality, glowing with a strong vitality. Haha, this feeling of pleasure is really good. Waving his arms, Blackbeard's mouth stinks, comparable to rotten fish. You're letting me go now, right? Covering her nose, Yushi's voice is pleasant to the ear, and her exquisite jade hand is gently waving, trying to isolate Blackbeard's bad breath. Let you go? How is that possible? Do you think I will obediently be the ship's doctor? Blackbeard's face changed into a sinister smile. Yushi's beautiful eyes flowed with sparkling tears, and her white and tender fingers trembled as she pointed at Blackbeard. How can you be so shameless, saying that you will be struck by lightning for breaking the oath? Blackbeard's face is sinister, and the corner of his mouth is high, with a contemptuous smile, pointing at the void. His expression is arrogant, with an indescribable savagery. If you don't accept it, then let the heavens strike me. Boom, boom, boom. The moment his voice fell, the cloudless sky suddenly became gloomy, and dark clouds gathered in the depths of the clouds, and dazzling thick lightning crackled, shocking the sky. The oath came true, you are on your own. Yushi blinked her eyes and smiled evilly. Blackbeard's eyes widened, and he looked at the lightning in the sky in horror. His heart was filled with fear, and he instinctively retreated, and a mouthful of old blood directly burst out. What kind of joke is this? Why didn't my previous wish come true? Chapter 677. In the sky above, dark clouds gathered and lightning flashed. The clouds above and below the clouds stirred, presenting a scene of the end of the world. The same scene played out in the sky within a radius of 10 miles. Oppressive and spectacular. Damn heavens, I didn't see you open your eyes before, but now you have. Blackbeard roared in fear. He couldn't bear the oppressive lightning. He pointed at the sky and cursed, as if this was the only way to vent the depression in his heart. Boom, boom, boom. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to understand Blackbeard's curses. The dark clouds in the sky expanded again, and the lightning became even more terrifying, as if it wanted to destroy the entire sea. Blackbeard smacked his lips as he saw this scene. He lowered his eyes and a cold light flashed in them. Is this little girl the heaven's granddaughter? Blackbeard, who didn't believe in ghosts and God's guest. For a moment he also suspected that his brain was damaged. Jejij, the clear and melodious sound of a silver bell entered his ears and Blackbeard was stunned. He raised his head and looked down at Yushi. It must be because of you, you little rascal. Blackbeard's eyes revealed an ominous glint. He immediately showed his evil character. He raised his right arm and pointed his palm in the direction of Yushi. A majestic gravitational force suddenly shot out. Dark water. Blackbeard laughed sinisterly. However, the next scene caused him to be stunned. His face was filled with astonishment. Yushi's body seemed to not exist. She was completely immune to the gravitational force. No matter how strong it was, how wide the range was, it couldn't shake her. Big beard, you will never be able to catch me. Her eyes narrowed into crescents. Yushi smiled proudly. Her crisp laughter was like the sound of a mountain spring, pleasant to the ear. However, Blackbeard felt a wave of nausea. It was full of sarcasm and ridicule. She was so close but he couldn't shake her. Wasn't this indirectly mocking him for being useless? I'm just thinking for you. You have angered the heavens by randomly swearing. If you kill me you won't even have a corpse left. Yushi softly persuaded. Blackbeard only sneered when he heard this. Although I don't know how it happened, it should be your doing. As long as I kill you, all of this will disappear. Blackbeard said through gritted teeth. At this point he had also given up on his unrealistic thoughts. As long as he could quickly send this living ancestor away, nothing else mattered. As for the idea of asking her to be the ship's doctor, he had also thrown it out of the window. Survival was the most important thing. Kill me? The key is, can you do it? Her thin lips slightly opened. Unlike the past, Yushi said lightly like a breeze. Kagaya was a divine tree, possessing insane vitality and recovery abilities. She had also inherited a large amount of chakra. You're just a little girl. Don't get carried away. Boom boom boom. Blackbeard's angry roar had yet to fall when the divine lightning that had been brewing for a long time rumbled down. The momentum of the divine lightning that could destroy the heavens and the earth made people tremble with fear. A trace of despair involuntarily rose from the bottom of their hearts. Fortunately, Blackbeard, who has extraordinary observation haki, has already predicted that although the lightning is fast, his attainments in observation haki are deeper. Dark water. The space shattered like a mirror, and a gigantic black hole suddenly appeared. At the instant the lightning and thunder attacked Blackbeard, his heart leaped to his throat. Then, the boundless gravitational force from the black hole spread out and instantly engulfed it. TSK 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 TSK. Idiot. Blackbeard beamed with joy. Gravity is the natural enemy of all things and affects the whole world. There is no ability that can ignore its existence. It can be so powerful now. When it is easy to use in the future, its power will be even more terrifying. You really are an idiot. Looking at Blackbeard with pity, Little Moon she let out a long sigh that did not match her age. There is no doubt that gravity is terrible. He also has to vary from person to person. Although the strength of temporarily obtaining the dark fruit is strong, he is still too far away to completely control it. You can swallow lightning, that's your self-deceiving idea. Yushi said indifferently. Boom boom boom. As if it was efficacious, a vast and pure lightning that was dozens of times thicker than before converged and instantly became 10 times thicker. The oppressive lightning made people not dare to look directly at it, and the hair all over their body trembled uncontrollably. Blackbeard's old face involuntarily flashed with fear. What a shocking aura. Blackbeard said with an ugly expression. This was not all the lightning in the sky. If all of them gathered together and fell. Just imagining it made Blackbeard shiver, and the fear in his eyes disappeared in an instant. Coaxer. Blackbeard, who thought for a long time without any countermeasures, could only lower his arrogant head and turn to ask little Yushi for help. The situation was stronger than him. If he wanted to live, he had to beg for mercy. His rough fat face tried to maintain a kind smile, even though it looked ugly as a pig. The moment he turned around, Blackbeard was dumbfounded. His mind was blank and he lost the ability to think. The scene in front of him was actually empty. As for Yushi, she had already run to God knows where. Only Blackbeard with a face full of astonishment, waiting for the lightning to strike. Boom boom boom. While Blackbeard was in a daze, the thunder that filled the sky poured down in torrents. The short gap eroded him. His whole body was like a lightning man bathed in lightning. One could clearly see the skeleton inside his body. Dustless, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly frowned. He felt a pair of small hands surrounding him. Opening his eyes, the reflection in his eyes was the smiling Yushi. Sighing helplessly, Dustless picked her up and scratched her nose. It's time to go back, Yushi, Dustless said softly. Then he carried her and disappeared from the island. He easily walked to the surface of the sea. It was clearly just a simple walk, but one step could strangely cross a distance of hundreds of meters. As for Fire Fist Ace, the person in charge of him was White Zetsu. Chapter 678. Blackbeard's life or death is not important to Dustless. Everything is just fate and no one will care about what happened to him. However, according to Dustless's guess, Blackbeard, who is full of luck, will never stop here in his life. His partner is still at large for the time being, and he should not give up Blackbeard easily. It takes a few days to reach Mariehua by boat, but Dustless only takes half a day to walk. Dustless's villa as a celestial dragon was brightly lit. When he arrived at Mariehua, it was close to dusk, and the gorgeous sunset was beautiful, enveloping Mariehua like a paradise on earth, and the golden color was beautiful. However, no one knew about the other miserable depravity after the golden brilliance. After half a day of walking, Dustless also felt deeply tired, and the cells all over his body began to protest against overtime. He wanted to ask White Zoo for other news, but he didn't think about it. There was still a long time in the future and there was no need to be so anxious. When he came to the bedroom, Dustless suddenly found that Yushi, the brat, had fallen asleep, with saliva on the corner of her mouth. He didn't know what she was dreaming about and she was giggling, which made him speechless. After taking Yushi back to her room, Dustless went back to his room to sleep. It was said to be sleeping, but he actually came to another world. The dark blue dreamy void, the fresh space makes people feel comfortable, and the majestic wind stacks up, beautiful as a painting. Dustless, who was invited by Ling came to the system world again. The lottery is held once every 5 years. After more than 10 years, Dustless has 2 chances, which is not easy to come by. Coming to the system world, Dustless first thought of the girls. As for the lottery, although it is important, it is not important to put it before or after, and it is even more insignificant compared to the beautiful scenery. This caused the system consciousness Ling to complain. In the room of the antique fragrance, Kaguya sat by the window, looking at the scenery outside the window. Her beautiful eyes were empty, and sometimes she would show a charming smile. Her pretty face was slightly red, and suddenly she was shocked to find a skilled big hand exploring her body. The movement was extremely skillful, gentle and delicate, like a spring breeze, and Kaguya's heart was rippling, and it immediately heated up rapidly. After a few rounds of teasing, Huey's breathing became heavier. "Don't mess around. It's still daytime." Huey blushed and said shyly. Even without turning her head, she knew that the owner of the careless hand was Dustless. In this world, only Dustless understood her body the best. Even though she was already over 1,000 years old, she was still much more conservative than Yuluo and the other ladies. She immediately tried her best to stop Dustless. "So what if it's daytime? The opportunity is fleeting. After a while we'll all be sleeping together." Dustless had a mortal body and he had not eaten for many days. Furthermore, he had gone through 2 consecutive fierce battles. The flames had already filled his body and mind. If he didn't release it now, he might explode. "I heard from Ueshi that you have a beautiful maid in the outside world," Huey said as she slapped away Dustless's thick arm. Her tone was somewhat resentful. "That traitor, I gave her food and drink every day, and now she dares to betray me." Dustless roared with righteous indignation. Even so, his sneaky eyes circled around Huey's body and flashed a bright light. Obviously he didn't care. No matter how Huey resisted, the hand chakra surged, and the 2 directly faced each other. The red-eyed Dustless directly rushed towards Huey. "Don't do it here, they can." Huey, who couldn't resist Dustless, panicked. Tsunade, Terumi Mei, Yuluo and the other women in the pavilion in the distance could clearly see. Although their strength was not as good as Dustless and her, they could still hear the sound at such a short distance. "Isn't this just right? How exciting." Dustless laughed. Immediately, no matter how Huey resisted, he directly covered her mouth. For the strong Dustless, the bed was too redundant, standing was enough. Until Huey couldn't bear the burden and fainted, and several other women were also fainted one after another, Dustless hummed a little tune to find the system consciousness Ling. There's no need to make such an expression. Looking at the black-faced Ling, speechlessly, Dustless secretly scolded her. He hadn't relaxed for a long time, and the masculinity that had been accumulated for a long time must be released. It's not a big deal to be ridiculous. Why don't we do it once? Dustless smiled maliciously. In contrast to the outside world, he was like a sculpture all day long. Now he was like a dissolute noble son, and he was the kind of person who dared to tease anyone. "I haven't seen you for a few days and your courage has grown a lot. You even dare to say such things to me." The system consciousness Ling looked at Dustless with interest, thinking of his glorious history. The reserved little brat in the past is now an adult, and knows how to do things that adults do. Dustless, who had lived 3 lives, could naturally hear Linger's teasing, but he didn't care. After holding it in for so long, it didn't hurt to occasionally indulge to improve the quality of his life. Yushi, that little girl, would pester Wuchen every day for various reasons. Even when sleeping every day she would do the same. She would use groundless reasons to sleep with him. Wuchen's inner depression could be imagined. Every day felt like a year. With such a good opportunity in front of him, he naturally wouldn't let it go easily. "With just you? You're still too far away, your little body will be sucked dry by me." Unlike before, Ling smiled. Her body also twisted, and that soul-stirring curve made Dustless dazzled. He was sure that the system consciousness in front of him was definitely in existence with some flesh. Chapter 679. Ling Er's devastatingly beautiful peerless talent was naturally coveted by Wu Chen. Unfortunately, Prince Xiang had a dream, but the goddess had no heart. Ling Er's body belonged to Wu Qin from beginning to end, but her heart was an exception. Dustless, who was not her opponent for the time being, certainly couldn't force himself on her. The 2 lottery draws have begun. Without waiting for Dustless to answer, Ling Er waved her hand lightly, and purple gas rotated on her fingers, floating with an indescribable charm. That mysterious power seemed to be the origin of the universe, and it could evolve any matter in the universe. In the blink of an eye, a giant wheel was formed with a bang and dazzling abilities were marked on it. Gulp. Even though Dustless's heart had been trained to be as firm as a rock in the face of this scene, he couldn't help but choke up. Looking at the whole world of One Piece, he was lonely at the top. And the whole vast universe? It was just a drop in the ocean, and he still had to rely on these abilities to step into a higher world. It's about to start. Ling Er opened her mouth and exhaled an intoxicating fragrance. Her pink and tender lips parted as she spoke. Dustless nodded when he heard the words, indicating that it could start. Looking at the various abilities on the wheel, the desire in Dustless's eyes was undisguised. Protecting these lovers and family members who were together with him day and night was his motivation to become stronger. The system was to provide him with assistance to become stronger. By the way, how is Yushi's strength? Her bloodline has the advantages of Kagaya, a rare peerless genius. Seeing that the wheel showed no signs of stopping, Yushi praised. Kagaya was the sacred tree itself, and Yushi was her Ling Er. Her aptitude and strength were self-evident. I also have my advantages. Dustless stared at Ling Er and then said helplessly, aptitude is not important. Yushi doesn't seem to be interested in cultivation. Let her be, it's not like I can't protect her. The gentle tone was full of confidence and Dustless's face was full of love. He liked this hard-won daughter very much. Ling Er, who was about to speak, suddenly raised her eyebrows, and the ground shook slightly. Buzz buzz buzz. The large turntable stopped spinning, and the scene that came into view was unflattering, at least in Dustless's eyes. He was not interested in it at all. Last time it was Uchiha Madara's Tengai Trembling Star, and this time it's Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison. Although it's a good technique, it doesn't work on me at all. He shook his head and sighed helplessly. His bleak tone was filled with disappointment. What he got this time was Madara's strongest move, Will Grave, Border Prison. However, it was useless, at least to the current Dustless. It wasn't just a technique like Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison. Even other heaven-defying techniques had little effect on Dustless, to the point of being negligible. You can only blame your bad luck. This kind of thing depends on your luck. At the same time, her jade-like fingers gently waved, and the large lottery wheel that had stopped began to spin once more. This was the second and final lottery draw. Look at my luck? That's also because your luck is bad, I didn't touch it. Dustless directly complained. Suddenly he felt a warm mysterious force quietly passing through his eyes, staying for a moment, and then rushing into his nerve endings, disappearing without a trace. Dustless knew that Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison had been saved in his eyes. Shaking his head, his disappointment and frustration were swept away. The higher the expectation, the greater the disappointment. He just needed to keep calm. In fact, this is also a good technique, but your requirements are too high. Ling Er whispered. The power of Tomb of Samsara, Border Prison is well known. It once killed 9 Bijou in an instant and easily injured Sasuke and Naruto, and this technique can be said to be unsolvable. Dustless gently nodded, reluctantly accepting Ling Er's words. Buzz buzz. After a while the ground trembled violently again. Looking up, he saw that the large lottery wheel had stopped spinning again. This is Whitebeard's tremor fruit. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, Dustless's pupils widened, and he exclaimed in surprise. As you can see, Ling Er echoed. This strange devil fruit was the tremor fruit. Known as the strongest paramecia, tremor fruit has enough power to easily destroy the world. But it seems to be useless for you. Wrinkling her white and tender nose, Ling Er said with a trace of sympathy in her tone. In the last few lottery draws, Wu Chen's luck was terrible. The things that were drawn were either unusable or had some other abilities. They were completely useless. Useless? You mean, tremor fruit. It's useless for me, but it's useful for others. Dustless's mouth raised a mysterious smile, and then his body slowly dissipated and completely disappeared. You want me to eat it? In the pavilion, Tsunade asked in confusion. Dustless nodded and handed the tremor fruit to Tsunade. You are a strength-type player, and tremor fruit is very suitable for you. It has the power to destroy the world. Dustless promised. Whitebeard's power is well known, and Tsunade's power is also unparalleled in the world. Eating tremor fruit, there is no doubt that she can also go to a higher level. This is a treasure that the whole world wants. It's enough to cause an unprecedented bloody storm. Looking at the tremor fruit in Tsunade's hand, Dustless sighed. Is it appropriate to give such a valuable thing to me? Tsunade blushed, embarrassed. Dustless smiled slightly and his eyes flashed with surprise. He didn't expect Tsunade to feel shy. Valuable? Maybe, if you have to measure the value of tremor fruit and you. Tremor fruit has a price but no market, and you are priceless from beginning to end, and the whole world can't exchange for it. Chapter 680. Even if you exchange the whole world for it, I will still be indifferent. This sentence lingered in Tsunade's ears, but it was deeply imprinted in her eyes. Her nose was slightly red, and the tears in her eyes almost burst out. However, Tsunade wasn't the kind of person who would cry. The strong were strong and the weak were weak. She just used all her strength to force the tears into her eyes. It's just an ordinary devil fruit. How can it be so important to me? Tsunade said rudely to cover up the change in her heart. What kind of people are they? Forget it as long as they are willing to eat it. Wuxia shook his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He naturally knew that Tsunade didn't mean what she said. In fact, she was moved to tears, but she was originally the kind of strong type. Perhaps if it was someone else, she would have already cried. Gulp. Tsunade took off the tremor fruit and looked at this strange fruit. She hesitated and put it in her mouth. After chewing and swallowing, her face suddenly changed and almost turned purple. It was no different from being poisoned. You bastard, this thing isn't used for murder, is it? Tsunade patted her chest and asked with a pale face. It was the most disgusting fruit she had ever eaten in her life, bar none. Just as she was about to scold Dustless, an unprecedented energy fluctuation suddenly emerged in her body, strengthening and changing her whole body. A majestic and boundless power surged into his heart. This is the devil fruit's ability? Tsunade's voice trembled and her face was shocked. She looked at her arm in disbelief. Her white fingers looked weak, but Tsunade knew that she could easily flatten a mountain. Yes, this is the ability of tremor fruit. It is said to have the power to destroy the world. Dustless nodded and praised, looking at Tsunade with shining eyes. The old guy Whitebeard is so strong that the whole marine is afraid of him. To a large extent, it is because of tremor fruit. Its power is unparalleled and it can easily destroy an island. I don't know to what extent you can use it. Dustless explained softly. The ability varies from person to person, and the key depends on the host. You want to know? Tsunade asked with interest. Isn't that obvious? Everyone wants to know the limit of the tremor fruit's power. Dustless rolled his eyes. Tsunade just smiled and immediately jumped up. Her white and tender fingers clenched into a fist, and with the force of falling, she blasted toward Wuxia. This crazy woman hasn't changed at all. Dustless, who didn't expect Tsunade's sudden attack, shook his head helplessly and remained silent. His body was covered with golden chakra. In fact, Dustless didn't hate Tsunade's attitude. Instead, he appreciated it. This was also Tsunade's personality. She was straightforward and forthright. Kinsusanu. Following Dustless's command, the golden shadow materialized, and a large hole-like frame condensed in an instant. The thick ribs were clearly visible. I used to worry about this thing, but now, break for me. Seeing this, Tsunade smiled pleasantly. Her tone revealed a kind of pleasure, as if she finally vented the grievances that she had endured for a long time. Her light voice was filled with unprecedented joy. Then Tsunade smashed Kinsusanu's head like a cannonball. Kakaka, the seemingly ordinary fist instantly revealed its ferocious appearance. With an invincible state, it instantly shattered the mature Kinsusanu's head. It was as if she was cutting tofu. She just ate the tremor fruit? She can play to this extent. Dustless's eyes widened and he couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. In his impression, Whitebeard was just SOSO. After thinking about it, he was relieved. Tsunade's foundation was originally good, and her strength was enough to shatter the earth. Now that she ate the tremor fruit, it would be strange if she couldn't break Kinsusanu. Looking up at Tsunade's smiling face, Dustless felt happy from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, he also had an idea in his heart. His confidant's basic strength was extremely strong. After each of them ate the devil fruit, they should have a great improvement. Tsunade and Kagaya were the same. Now Tsunade could easily destroy the mature Kinsusanu, and Kagaya ate the light fruit that Dustless got from the lottery, and her strength reached a higher level. Hey. How long are you going to look down on me? You dare to be distracted in the battle. Tsunade's angry roar resounded through the sky, and the dissatisfaction in her tone was clear. She glared at Dustless, and the strength of her fist became more domineering. The moment he came into contact with Dustless, he merely lifted his palm in a carefree manner. Boom! The powerful fist containing the power of thousands of pounds fell softly in the palm of Dustless's hand. He grabbed it lightly as if he was grabbing a baby's small hand and played with it casually. How is it possible? Tsunade lost her mind for a while and said uncontrollably. Her current strength had reached an incredible level, but Dustless could still borrow her attack so easily. It would be strange if she wasn't surprised. Impossible? My body is equivalent to the Jubi, and I have practiced taijutsu for more than 10 years in the One Piece world. The toughness of my body has long been beyond your imagination. Dustless explained calmly, and his tone was as light as a breeze. Seeing Tsunade in disbelief, Dustless just smiled. Over the years, Tsunade and the others have been improving. With the help of Kagaya, the ancestor of chakra, their strength can be said to be 1,000 miles a day. But they also ignored one thing: Dustless is also improving rapidly, and the speed is faster than them. Chapter 681. Tsunade was shocked. She didn't expect that the gap between her and Wu Chen was so big that she couldn't look at his back. She could only stare silently behind him. I didn't expect you to progress so fast, Tsunade. Perceiving the strength of Tsunade's fist, Dustless gently nodded, showing a satisfied smile. Perhaps if it was someone else, they would be turned into a pool of flesh and blood. Am I strong? Tsunade's beautiful eyes rolled, flashing a strange luster. Her eyes narrowed into a crescent moon with a teasing tone. Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly, feeling that Tsunade's words had other meanings, but he still nodded. Tsunade's current state was indeed different from before. There was a dimensional gap. If that's the case, then I'll let you see a stronger me. As soon as the words fell, Dustless grabbed Tsunade's fist, and a white halo swept out without warning. Then the entire space roared and trembled, making a violent vibration. Ripples visible to the naked eye spread rapidly along Tsunade's fist, like a wave erupting and swallowing the entire sky. Hum! A faint sound of sorrow rang out, spreading to every corner of the world, and the entire void was surrounded. Kakaka, the void in front of Dustless suddenly burst, and cracks like a spider web appeared. Violent energy fluctuations extended with these transparent cracks. Dustless was annihilated in an instant. Pucci? Caught off guard, Dustless's body was instantly torn apart, turning into several halves floating in the air. Dustless's eyes were full of a rare dullness. Although it's my carelessness. But how is this possible? Did Tsunade not use the power of Tremor fruit in the attack just now? Dustless's heart was shocked, speechless, like the waves for a long time. Silent for a while, Wu Chen knew that it was the ability of Tremor fruit, Gura no Mi. It can cause vibrations at will, and the degree can be adjusted. It can cause tsunamis. It has the power to destroy the world. Boom boom boom, a loud roar woke Dustless up from his thoughts. He looked up and saw the ground burst open. A ferocious crack appeared, extending endlessly into the distance, as if it was going to pull the whole world into it. Dustless's old face twitched as he looked at his body that had been torn to pieces. He felt gloomy. With a thought, his body recovered. How does it feel to be torn apart? Tsunade teased. In the past, it was difficult to even touch Dustless's body. Tsunade was also surprised. She didn't expect the devil fruit to be so powerful. It was true that he had the power to destroy the world. How does it feel? What do you think? I have an immortal body. Physical attacks of that level are just tickling. Dustless didn't care on the surface, but his heart was full of anger. If he didn't teach this little girl a lesson, it wouldn't take long for Tsunade to turn over and press Dustless under her body. Although he had an immortal body, it was not a glorious thing to be torn apart. Dustless's sharp eyes stared at Tsunade's body, and the corner of his mouth raised a malicious smile. His pupils twisted sharply, and his left eye turned into a purple Rinnegan Sharingan. Dustless also planned to try the jutsu he got from the lottery. Staring at the place where Tsunade stood for a long time, Wu Chen's left eye suddenly widened, and dangerous energy fluctuations were released. The invisible ripples instantly swallowed the entire eye socket. At the same time, a mysterious, undetectable and undefendable power fluctuation covered Tsunade's whole body, but it was very weak. It looked harmless and almost negligible. Tomb of Samsara, border prison. With Dustless's voice fell, this mysterious unknown power, in just an instant became thousands of times stronger, and Tsunade's whole body was bounced away. Boom boom boom. Under the impact of the powerful force, Tsunade directly smashed a mountain out of thin air, and easily turned it into dust like tofu. It was enough to show how shocking the power of Tomb of Samsara, border prison, was. That bastard must be deliberately revenged, narrow-minded man. Under the ruins, Tsunade was intact and her snow-white skin was pink. The most exciting thing was that under the impact of the strong repulsive force, the clothes all over her body were blown apart. Her clothes didn't cover her body. Even with Tsunade's forthright personality, she couldn't help but blush at this moment. Because the two behemoths in front of her were too big, she directly drooped. This scene caused one's imagination to run wild. "Little guy, you dare to fight with me?" In the sky, Dustless laughed in high spirits. Even with the mountain ruins buried, Tsunade was exposed under Dustless's eyes. Her jade-like body was exquisite, as pure as the first snow, dazzling him. The extinguished flame in Dustless's heart soared again. "Really? When did I become like this?" Shaking his head fiercely, trying to calm himself down, Dustless couldn't help but laugh bitterly at himself. In the past he could clear his mind, but recently, it seemed that he was getting more and more out of tune, and his whole mind was filled with images that were not suitable for children. Boom boom boom. The earth trembled as an energy fluctuation powerful enough to destroy the heavens, and the earth burst out from the ruins. It was like an evil dragon that had awakened from its slumber in ancient times. It stretched out endlessly with a monstrous momentum. Immediately after, countless large pieces of rubble collapsed, turning into fine particles that resembled a drizzle. The naked Tsunade suddenly reflected in Dustless's eyes. "It doesn't matter, anyway, it's not like you haven't seen it before." With her hands on her hips, looking up at Dustless in the sky, Tsunade was unexpectedly magnanimous, and her jade-like face was natural and neat, giving the feeling of a heroine. Dustless's eyes couldn't help but stagnate, and his even breathing became faster. He was not a monk, especially after becoming a different kind of sacred tree. His energy and physical strength were almost infinite. Chapter 682. Wuchen couldn't help but be speechless. A person always degenerates in peace. The saying was not wrong at all. When one is full, one will think of lust. A peaceful and beautiful environment always slowly annihilates a person's hot-bloodedness and makes him lose his ambition. After taking a deep breath, she stabilized her fluctuating impatience. The flame of desire in Wu Chen's eyes was extinguished. Her clean face calmed down, and she returned to her usual indifferent self. His eyes lost the fiery color from before and were replaced with an unchanging indifference. "Beauty trap doesn't work on me, Tsunade." Dustless's heart was as calm as water. The light accent was like a gust of wind, guiding all kinds of emotions out of the mind, full of absolute reason. A pair of deep eyes were shining, looking at Tsunade like a torch. Immediately, the pupils of Dustless's eyes turned sharply. A piece of clothing that Dustless usually uses for himself was thrown to Tsunade. He has completely used Kamui as a storage space. Tsunade, who grabbed the clothes, hurriedly put them on. She tried to be as bold as possible, but it didn't mean that she could directly fight with Dustless without clothes. "By the way, the speed of your progress is really amazing." Staring at the broken ground, it was as if it was hit by a meteorite. It collapsed, a large deep pit appeared, and countless dense cracks appeared. Of course, this is Kagaya Sister's guidance. Of course, the progress is fast. Not only me but also Chirumi Mei, Red Lotus, and that little girl Cheyenne. The fastest progress is your first wife Yuluo. Maybe she has surpassed you. Tsunade chuckled, with pride and arrogance in her words, trying to catch disappointment from Dustless's face, but he was as still as a rock. Kagaya Sister? Dustless's face was strange, and his mind was uncontrollably cold. He always felt that this name was neither fish nor fowl. Then he didn't think much about it, and the corner of his mouth outlined a faint smile. Tsunade can call Kagaya so intimately, indicating that they get along very well with each other. As for whether Yuluo could really surpass him, Dustless didn't care. It wasn't realistic. Even Huey wasn't his match, let alone Yuluo. At the same time, Tsunade's momentum continued to rise. Even before she made a move, Dustless could vaguely see the cracks in the air. "Haven't you had enough?" Dustless frowned and said. Tsunade just chuckled when she heard this. "You should at least let me familiarize myself with this tremor fruit." Tsunade smiled tenderly, extremely serious. Dustless didn't comment. This was true. He had just eaten the tremor fruit for less than an hour. It was indeed necessary to familiarize himself with some unknown abilities. After using it to the extreme, he could enter the Devil Fruit's higher level ability, Devil Fruit Awakening. "Where's Huey? They have a lot of free time. Why don't you go find them?" "I'm very busy," Dustless asked. In the system's world, they had nothing to do and were bored out of their minds. Every time they got together, they would mostly brag about their past. After a long time, these women were even better at bragging than Dustless. "Them?" Tsunade shook her head resolutely when she heard this. "They all stop at a certain point. It's difficult to understand the fruit's ability at a deeper level. Only you have a black heart and never show any mercy. This is suitable." Dustless's face suddenly twitched when he heard this, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Staring at Tsunade with gloomy eyes, Dustless opened his mouth to refute, but he couldn't speak because this was a fact. This was also why Yulua and others often asked him to practice, so Dustless rarely showed mercy. Since it was a training, there was no need to hold back. Between suffering more now and bleeding in the future, which was more important, Wuxian was naturally clear as a mirror. Therefore, every time he squeezed out their strength to the greatest extent, he chose to ruthlessly destroy the flowers and teach them a lesson. Only when a person was forced into a desperate situation could the body's potential erupt. For example, Luffy's Haushiko was awakened because of this. Without pressure, there would be no motivation. Only deadly pressure can give them the motivation to improve. Dustless walked this way in the past. "Since you still came to me. This is what you asked for, Tsunade." Dustless's expression solidified, and his face instantly became cold. Tsunade knew that Dustless was such a person, but she still came to train with him, indicating that she was mentally prepared. Dustless naturally won't show mercy. The palm of his hand was aimed at the sky below, exuding dangerous energy fluctuations. Dustless's expression was cold, and his left eye had been replaced by the Tensigen. "Good luck. I hope you can touch the ability of tremor fruit as soon as possible, as well as its true form." The majestic repulsive force condensed in his hand, and immediately roared mercilessly. Boom! The ground with a radius of tens of miles burst open in an instant, shaking violently, and immediately collapsed. Tsunade, who was caught off guard, lost her balance and fell directly into it. As for whether it can hurt Tsunade, Dustless is not worried. Her exuberant vitality is enough to guarantee everything. Especially with the recent guidance of Kagaya, she has a more thorough understanding of the control of Baihao Jutsu and In Seal. In the entire system world, except for Dustless and Kagaya, it is estimated that Tsunade's vitality and healing ability are the strongest. Boom! 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 A black shadow on the ground jumped out of thin air, and almost instantly, it roared up like a cannonball. What an amazing jumping ability! Dustless secretly clicked his tongue, jumping nearly 100 meters in an instant, far beyond the physique of a ninja. "I said I won't show mercy. In that case, you should go down obediently." His eyes emitted a cold light, and Dustless's body emitted a golden double-sided Susanoo, making the same handprint as his body. The sky suddenly darkened. Tengai Season. Chapter 683. The pitch-black shadow covered the sky and covered the earth. All things lost their light and appeared to be in a state of wailing. Everything in the world seemed to be in a state of collapse. The pitch-black shadow shrouded an area that was boundless and filled one with despair. This indescribable oppression was unparalleled, and the lazy white clouds in the sky were crushed by the vast momentum, revealing his ferocious appearance. A meteorite with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers slowly fell. "How can this kind of thing be useful? I'm not as weak as before." Her beautiful eyes were filled with confidence. Tsunade rushed up, swept past Dustless's body, and rushed straight toward the meteorite in the sky at full speed. Kakaka, her arm was covered with a white halo and countless cracks appeared in the air. The range was almost unlimited, and it swallowed 1/10 of the meteorite. Even so, the power it unleashed was enough to stun anyone. Boom boom boom, the center of the meteorite, because that was where Tsunade bombarded with full force, suddenly trembled fiercely, and the whole meteorite gave the illusion that it was lifted a little for a moment and it stopped falling. Kakaka. The crisp sound of the explosion came into the ears, and the tiny cracks spread rapidly, almost like a whale swallowing the entire surface of the meteorite. Didn't you always say that a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes? Dustless, why do you always look at others with the same eyes? Tsunade smiled. As her voice fell, the meteorite in the sky finally couldn't bear the pressure and began to peel off. Boom, boom, boom. Several loud rumbling sounds swept out of the sky, and then the sky was filled with a dust rain, all of which were composed of various large and small meteorite fragments. The scene was very spectacular. So what? It's boring. Wu Qin said softly, his face expressionless. The dazzling light condensed at the tip of his finger, and immediately whistled out. This strange energy impact was unparalleled, full of evil oppression and terrifying energy fluctuations. This is Bijadama? Staring at the golden ball in Dustless's hand, Tsunade was shocked. The evil and gloomy chakra was obviously a high-density Bijadama, and the condensed chakra was huge, and its power was several times stronger than the Kyubi she had seen before. Boom, boom, boom. A huge ball of fire rose up in the void and the scattered soil was instantly engulfed and annihilated. The dark sky once again regained its sunny appearance. Glancing at Tsunade, Dustless leaned over. This battle continued for several hours before it ended. Without a doubt, it ended with Dustless's victory. The winner has the spoils of war. Naturally, he won't easily let go of the exhausted Tsunade. He whipped her until she fainted. Only then did Wu Qin settle the matter. Dustless chose to coldly suppress this matter for the sake of a man's reputation. When Dustless woke up the next morning, it was already late in the morning. Wu Qin, who was sleeping, frowned. Suddenly he felt that there was something soft in the quilt. He gently pulled open the soft chonk quilt. A little girl who was curled up like a kitten came into view. Yushi. Dustless's pupils dilated as a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. He instinctively touched his clothes. Fortunately, this little girl didn't mess around. Wu Qin breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the little girl who was sleeping soundly, he pinched her rosy cheeks and then shook his head helplessly. His mischievous daughter liked to be mischievous and pranks the most. She often did some unbearable things, even Dustless was pranked by her. Father? In a trance, aware of Dustless's movements, Yushi opened her eyes and looked at the serious face of Dustless. When she was about to ask, Dustless's solemn voice came in advance. Yushi, why are you in my room? I remember I put you back yesterday. Dustless's face was stiff, and his tone was a little angry. This little girl was getting more and more unruly. In the middle of the night, she actually launched a sneak attack. If he always let her do as she pleased, maybe there will be a big mess in the future. Yushi's eyes narrowed into crescent moons, and her delicate face revealed a small dimple. Obviously, she had expected Dustless to ask such a question. Father, look carefully. Yushi's tone was sly, and the corner of her mouth was hidden with a teasing smile. Looking around, Dustless was suddenly petrified. The room was exactly the same as before, the only difference was that this was Yushi's room. Yesterday when Father was sleeping, I took the opportunity to snatch you. Yushi proudly said as she looked down at Dustless with her hands on her hips. Yesterday, Dustless was unconscious, so she transported him overnight. His old face collapsed and Dustless's face unconsciously twitched. When he went into the system world, he did not expect this little girl to take advantage of the loophole. Come here, you are not allowed to do this kind of thing in the future. Pulling Yushi in front of him, Dustless coldly reprimanded. This little girl is getting bolder and bolder. Today it may be her room, but another day she may throw Dustless into the sea. Thinking of Yushi's strange temperament, Dustless felt a headache and helplessness. Sighing inwardly, he pushed all the responsibility to Huiji. This was the result of her indulgence. Yesterday I smelled a disgusting smell from Father's body. Wrinkling her white jade-like nose, Yushi pouted in dissatisfaction. Her heart was abnormally unhappy. Smell? Dustless curiously asked. The smell of other women? It must be because of Father's private life. You even had those disgusting erotic dreams. You are not young anymore, don't be like a child all day. Yushi lectured. Dustless's old face was red, and the blood in his heart was boiling. He almost spat out a mouthful of old blood, but he could not say anything. Chapter 684. Dustless's old face turned green and he could only smile bitterly. For this strange daughter, he was helpless, he couldn't beat her or scold her, it was really a headache. Every time he taught this little girl a lesson, Yushi would cry and complain to Kagaya, and Kagaya inevitably scolded Dustless. Rubbing her black hair, Dustless lazily lay on the bed, closed his eyes and smelled the girl's faint fragrance, and his thoughts became active. He involuntarily began to think about the situation of today's world. I must have guessed it. Seeing that Wu Chen was silent, little Yushi nodded seriously. In her heart, she naturally thought that Wu Chen was in the wrong. Then she happily jumped around on the bed. Like a little elf, sometimes she would rub on Dustless's body, laughing coquettishly and acting cute, causing Dustless to roll his eyes, but he didn't stop Yushi. Father, I want to be a pirate. Blinking her eyes, Yushi suddenly said something surprising. Dustless didn't object and looked at Yushi with interest. I need a suitable reason, and the daughter of a marine admiral is going to be a pirate? It's very bad for my reputation. Dustless reprimanded with a straight face. In fact, he didn't care. Pirates and marines didn't mean much to Dustless, and the pirates he secretly raised were not a small number, and they were all the best kind of pirates. More free and happy than now. Tilting her head, Yushi answered. Liar. Dustless pinched Yushi's face and stared at Yushi's shining pupils. His eyes became cold for a moment, directly seeing her heart. Seeing Wu Chen's elegant smile, Yushi hurriedly avoided his gaze. She didn't dare to look at Wu Chen. She leaned against Wu Chen's stomach and acted coquettishly, saying in a coquettish voice, I will spy for father. Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect this little girl to spy on him. I'm talking about information on beauties. I'm specifically searching for all kinds of beauties for father to satisfy your cravings. Yushi's eyes flashed with unshakable determination as she clenched her fists and said seriously. That sonorous and powerful voice was like an oath, causing Dustless to be at a loss. His eyes twitching violently, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Yushi. He no longer paid any attention to her, minding his own business as he put on his clothes. Sometimes, the more you talk, the more mistakes you make. The worst part was that this little girl would often report to Huey and Dustless's other female friends, making things difficult for Dustless. In the eyes of those women, Dustless had unknowingly turned from a gentleman to a sex fiend, and according to Yushi's description, it was an extremely perverted kind. Father is going to deal with those pirates again? Unlike the past, little Yushi hugged the pillow. Her beautiful voice was less crisp and sweet-sounding, and more reluctant and a touch of loneliness. Dustless's footsteps suddenly stopped, and his face flashed with a complicated expression. In fact, he knew that Yushi was like Uzumaki Naruto, always attracting his attention with all kinds of amazing actions. In the next few years, father will accompany you every day. Dustless rubbed Yushi's long black hair and then leaned over to Yushi's side. His dry lips fell on little Yushi's clean forehead as he vowed. Hearing this, Yushi's eyes flashed with joy, and the corner of her mouth also had an excited smile. But the moment she raised her head, she saw Dustless's evil smile. Her perfect little face suddenly stiffened, and the smile on the corner of her mouth disappeared in an instant. She said insincerely, Smelly, don't touch me in the future, old man. After that, she wiped the remaining water stains on her forehead for fear of being contaminated by Dustless. This little girl is really arrogant. Dustless stared at Yushi and then simply walked out of her room. The observant Dustless naturally knew that Yushi was deliberately pretending for him to see. Boom. The moment the door closed, there was a cheer in the room. In the quiet study, Dustless quietly looked at the information sent by White Zetsu. Most of it was about the New World pirates and the movements of the Marine headquarters. Dustless did not say anything about capturing Fire Fist Ace and pretended that nothing had happened. Unlike the calm Dustless, the Whitebeard pirates were in a hurry, and the whole world was frantically looking for Ace. For Ace, Whitebeard liked him very much. That old guy is too attached to feelings, so he was used by Sengoku. If he pretended to be cold, Sengoku might not have the idea of capturing Fire Fist Ace. This is his own fault and he can't blame others. Dustless whispered softly. This kind of thing is a double-edged sword, hurting others and hurting oneself. Dustless, Sama is now going to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku? White Zetsu asked. Hearing this, Dustless bowed his head and thought for a few seconds and shook his head resolutely. Even if he gave Ace to Sengoku now, Sengoku may not be fooled. Sengoku used to be called a wise admiral, and the great staff officer of the Marine headquarters. These people are the old antiques of the previous era. They are very deep and have unique vision. It is certainly impossible to give Ace to them. In other ways it will not arouse Sengoku's suspicion. Otherwise it will only be self-defeating. Today Sengoku has been a fleet admiral for more than 10 years. Even if Ace is handed over to him, he will not blindly fight with Whitebeard without absolute certainty. If he is not careful, the Marine may fall into a hopeless situation. By the way, how is Ace doing recently? Dustless, who had no countermeasures for the time being, asked. Him? He can eat and drink, he is alive and kicking all day long. He will satirize me and seems to be talking about Luffy. White Zetsu said bitterly. Straw Hat Luffy has a good relationship with Ace. I can make use of him. A cold light flashed across Dustless's mouth. The corner of his mouth raised a strange curve. Chapter 685. Sengoku is not an idiot. Once he thinks that the Marine headquarters does not have the strength to compete with the Whitebeard pirates, even if he gives Fire Fist Ace to him, he will not publicly execute him. Quietly imprison Ace in the Impel Down, or directly execute him secretly so that no one would know. I am afraid that Sengoku will not publicly execute him. Because of Dustless Sama, many of the Yonko, 4 emperors, have secretly chosen to join forces. The consequences of rashly executing Fire Fist Ace will not be borne by Sengoku. It is likely that Dustless will join forces with the other 3 Yonko, 4 emperors, to attack the Marine headquarters together. Due to Dustless's oppression, the 4 emperors had no choice but to work together secretly. Since they couldn't fight one-on-one, they could only gang up. This was also forced out by Dustless, and it was all thanks to him. That's right. Wuxia nodded in agreement. Blackbeard also blamed Dustless for Surd's death, but he didn't see Whitebeard take revenge, indicating that Whitebeard has been worn out by Dustless, so it is possible for him to join forces with other Yonko, 4 emperors, such as Red Hair Shanks and the like. The Marine headquarters can barely cope with 1 Yonko, 4 emperors, and dealing with 2 at the same time is equivalent to a dead end. No matter what, we must let Sengoku publicly execute Fire Fist Ace. This is not up to him. Wu Qin said in a low voice, and his tone was more inviolable. The leadership was not in the hands of the warring states from the beginning. He can only go with the flow, and the only way to go against the flow is to die. The more chaotic the world is, the more obvious the opportunities and advantages of Dustless will be. If he wants to seize the dominance of the world, he must first stir up this pool of water so that he can fish in troubled water with peace of mind. Dustless's eyes were shining. Although because of his trouble the Yonko, 4 emperors, joined forces, the process of history can never be changed. The only headache is how to give Ace to Sengoku. Obviously, Sengoku, who is suspicious by nature, will suspect that Dustless is plotting against him. Ka. At this moment, there was a burst of messy footsteps in the corridor. Young Master Straw Hat Luffy has a bounty on him. It was Dustless's personal maid, Boa Hancock. Dustless took the bounty list from Hancock's hand and saw the smiling Manchi D. Luffy. He was quite excited. Straw Hat Luffy defeated Arlong, the leader of the Dragon Pirates, and his bounty was raised to 30 million berries. Hancock explained, somewhat with a hint of astonishment. With a bounty of 30 million berries, a newcomer with a bounty of 3,000 berries for the first time at sea is rare. White Zoo also smacked his tongue, his tone was surprised. Most of the rookies who went out to sea would only have a bounty of 10 to 20 million. There were even a few who had a few million bounties. It was unheard of for someone like Luffy to have a bounty of 30 million on his first mission. He's Garp's grandson. It's normal for the bounty to be exaggerated. Maybe the Marine headquarters knows that he's Garp's grandson. Maybe the bounty will be higher. Dustless said. The name on the bounty list is just Straw Hat Luffy. Maybe the Marine headquarters doesn't know that he's Garp's grandson. Otherwise the bounty may become higher. But Luffy gave me an inspiration. It's a pity that I don't use such a good chess piece. Dustless's eyes were shining. He was worried that there was no way to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku. The appearance of Straw Hat Luffy made Dustless unexpectedly see the light of hope. Dustless, Sama is going to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku now? White Zoo frowned and asked. Hearing this, Dustless just shook his head. It's a bit early now. He's not the kind of impatient kid. It's not too late to use Luffy after everything is ready. Haste makes waste. Fire Fist Ace, let's ignore him for now. Although White Zoo has been shouting that Ace's injury has healed, Dustless estimated that the kid was actually pretending. He was seriously injured by him, and the bullet with armament hockey penetrated his abdomen. The wound healed extremely slowly. 80% of the time he pretended to be healed, waiting to approach Dustless and take the opportunity to kill him. In this regard, Dustless can only shake his head helplessly. If he was so easy to kill, he would have fallen many years ago. It's that old boy Blackbeard. The thread of discussion suddenly turned, and Dustless pulled the source of the problem to Blackbeard. Seeing that Dustless didn't say anything about Ace's movements, the guy actually ran back to the Whitebeard pirates. It was as if nothing had happened and he was still sitting there as an unknown person. Blackbeard naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to tell Blackbeard about Ace's whereabouts. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. The most taboo of the Whitebeard pirates is killing each other. Blackbeard's actions have exceeded the bottom line of what Whitebeard can tolerate. He's still not dead, he's still plotting for Tremor Fruit, Gura Gura no Mi. Dustless is sure that when he finds the right opportunity, Blackbeard will launch a sneak attack on Whitebeard. He's not the kind of person who knows how to be filial to Whitebeard. He won't hesitate to take the opportunity to kill him and replace him. Of course, the biggest reason is to seize Tremor Fruit, Gura Gura no Mi. For the Tremor Fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, Blackbeard has always been looking forward to it. As long as there is a suitable opportunity, he will grab it. Temporarily hiding the Whitebeard pirates can avoid being disturbed by others and can also find suitable companions. Blackbeard's ultimate goal is a Yonko for emperors, and the higher pirate king. He naturally can't be alone, so he has to choose the right crew. Rumble. At this moment, an unexpected sound suddenly sounded. Dustless frowned at the Den Mushy and couldn't help but feel strange. Chapter 686. In the town, the people passing by had a satisfied smile on their faces, and they were working very well, working hard to repair the town that was destroyed because of the fierce fight. Even though they were sweating, they were still happy to work. The spacious sports field was filled with the aroma of roasted meat. Flames were everywhere, and one could clearly see all kinds of livestock being slaughtered. There is no doubt that these are used to celebrate. Prisoners with hideous faces were tied to thick trees. These people's skin was different from human beings. They were blue or dark red and they had sharp teeth. Their fierce appearance was obviously human. Looking closely, it was Arlong's group of dragon pirates. At this moment, they were all stunned and their eyes were shining, waiting for the Marines who were about to escort them to prison. The reason for the celebration was that Straw Hat Luffy defeated them and liberated the town from the crisis. So these kind and simple people entertained Luffy and others with hard-won wine and meat. Manchidi. Luffy, Reloja Zoro, and Sanji, including Nami who had just joined the pirates, were laughing and drinking, eating meat and talking happily. The joy of victory also made them put aside their inner prejudices and be able to integrate well into everything. Poof. Luffy, you know a Marine Admiral? Sanji spat out the barbecue that he ate uncontrollably. He knew that the act of wasting food was shameful, but the restlessness in his heart was still difficult to suppress. I heard Zoro say that guy seems to be a Marine Admiral. I don't know what he does. Luffy explained while eating the sweeper barbecue. In the blink of an eye, all the barbecue was swept away by the wind. It is indeed a Marine Admiral. I saw it with my own eyes. The youngest and strongest admiral in history. Even if he was only wearing casual clothes at the time, he couldn't escape my eyes, Zoro confirmed with a sip of wine. At the same time, the hands holding the sword also flashed a touch of throbbing. Marine Admiral? That's a super creature at the top of the food chain who can look down on the whole world, the real top power. Compared with Arlong who was just defeated, there is a complete difference in dimension. Hearing this, Sanji and Nami looked at each other and in the next second both of them were petrified. They stared at Luffy who was eating meat in horror. This guy is simply setting himself on fire and doesn't know how to write the word, death. You know a Marine Admiral and you dare to be a pirate? Sanji and Nami looked at each other and exclaimed in unison. He couldn't help but sweat for Luffy's courage. Knowing a Marine Admiral and daring to be a pirate without fear of death, I'm afraid this is the first time in history. Well, I don't care if that guy is a Marine Admiral or not, I just want to take risks, Luffy said while eating. Nami and Sanji were speechless and tangled for a while. They suddenly regretted that joining this temporary pirate group might be the worst choice in their lives. If the captain was so unreliable, who else could be trusted? I hope that Marine Admiral won't come to us. Sanji and Namawa can only pray silently in their hearts, hoping that Dustless will not come to their door. Other admirals may be okay, but if they are targeted by the youngest admiral, they will only end up dead. Over the years, the pirates who have been targeted by him have no choice but to go to impel down. Don't show such a surprised expression, he is not as scary as you think. Luffy showed an innocent and brilliant smile, giving people a feeling of peace and tranquility, like a spring breeze, like a panacea, making people feel relaxed. Luffy, you are really optimistic. Sanji felt helpless. When Zoro saw the two of them like this, he just shrugged his shoulders and acted as if it had nothing to do with him. In fact, he had the same expression as Sanji and Nami. Being targeted by a Marine Admiral and still being so optimistic, I am afraid that only Luffy can be so optimistic in the world. That guy doesn't look like a bad guy. Last time I told him that I wanted to be a pirate, he just smiled. Luffy patted his chest and promised. He is indeed not a bad guy, but we are bad guys now, and his job is to capture bad guys like us who commit crimes. Nami rolled her eyes and had a deeper understanding of Luffy's strange thinking. At the same time she regretted it. Just now she had promised to join the Straw Hat Pirates and be Luffy's navigator. It's too late to regret now. Is a Marine Admiral strong? Even if he comes, I will definitely hit him and won't allow him to hurt my partners. When the word partners was mentioned, Luffy dropped the barbecue in his hand and his face was firm. Partners are even more important to him than life. That was before you had a bounty on your head. As a Marine, he naturally can't hurt innocent people. Don't forget, now you are a pirate with a bounty of 30 million berries. No one in East Blue has a higher bounty than you. The more potential a pirate has, the more likely they are to be the first target of the Marine. Nami's tone was worried. How strong a Marine Admiral is? It's hard to say. In short, he is very strong. An Admiral is the highest battle power in the Marine and is beyond people's imagination. The silent Sanji explained. Red-footed Zeph had once been in the New World and described the horror of Admiral to Sanji. Pointing to Arlong's group who were tied up, Sanji said in a deep voice, maybe he can kill him with just 3 punches and 2 kicks. A mere 20 million pirates is just a small ant in front of an admiral. There is no need to do anything. Zoro, who had been silent all this time, opened his eyes, and his eyes shone with a cold light. Maybe it's just a casual glance and I can easily kill that Arlong. There's no need for any extra movements. Meeting a general is enough to scare him out of his wits. Chapter 687. Luffy's eyes widened, and his hand that was eating meat stopped. He looked at Zoro in disbelief as if he had seen a ghost. He spent so much effort to defeat the enemy, but Zoro said that an admiral may only need one look to subdue him. He subconsciously looked at his bandaged body, and suddenly felt that the scars on his body were not worth it. Don't think it's an exaggeration, the strength of an admiral is really beyond imagination. Only you don't understand the horror of an admiral. Luffy, you have to figure out that the entire Marine has about hundreds of thousands of people, and there are only 4 admirals. Nami explained. Zoro and Sanji were accustomed to it. They wandered outside all year round and naturally understood it better than Luffy. Gulp. Luffy unconsciously swallowed his breath. Thinking of Dustless's face, Luffy always felt that it was a bit of a fantasy, and he didn't see the slightest shadow of a strong person. He was a little sluggish. Although Luffy was ignorant, he also understood that pirates and Marines were 2 opposing organizations, which also showed that he would have to face terrifying enemies like Dustless in the future. Clenching his fist, for a moment his heart was as heavy as a mountain. Dustless's light smile filled his mind and he couldn't get rid of it. It was like a heart demon that would always stay in his heart. Luffy was not afraid of life and death. The moment he went to sea, he had already put life and death aside. But for the life and death of his companions, he regarded it as important as Mount Tai and would never allow others to hurt them. Fear, fear like an ant, tremble, tremble, the man you are talking about, I have known and fought against him. When the awakened fishman Along heard this, he immediately raised his head to the sky and laughed wildly. His unbridled laughter was filled with unprecedented pleasure, revealing his sharp and pointy teeth, and his voice carried a sharp roar. Luffy saw the mouth full of sharp teeth, his body couldn't help but tremble, his neck subconsciously shrank, and the tingling in his arm instantly eroded all over his body. You want to explore the new world with your current state? Stop daydreaming, you stupid pigs. The fishman Along laughed wildly and taunted, venting the joy in his heart. Whiz. The Tachi was unsheathed, and a sharp cold light whistled out and instantly swallowed the fishman Arlong. Ka. Instantly countless cold marks appeared on the surrounding walls. Tell me everything you know or else. Zoro's eyes flashed with a cold light as he unsheathed his katana. The threat was self-evident. Now that they are pirates, it is necessary to inquire about the news of the marine, especially the information of the admiral. Although it is still far away for them, it is necessary to delve into it. Luffy also dropped the barbecue in his hand, which was a rare sight. The crowd gathered around Along and looked at him, clearly wanting him to explain everything clearly. Do you think I'll submit just because of your murderous eyes? In your dreams. Blue veins appeared on his blue face as Along's face was full of ridicule and disdain. These little brats actually wanted to threaten him, it was simply a fool's dream. Then he looked at the few of them, his eyes glowing with a green light as if he was going to devour them. Suddenly he changed the topic. But since you want to know, I don't mind fulfilling your wishes. Letting you damned humans live in fear every day is also a form of revenge in disguise, kik. Sanji's face turned cold when he heard this and his right foot rose from the ground. When he was about to teach him a lesson, Zoro pulled Sanji's body and shook his head to indicate that there was no need to act rashly. It would be too ungentlemanly to see a stray dog. The man you're talking about, with a gloomy face, the fishman Arlong remembered the time when he invaded Mariehua and couldn't help but shudder. After taking a deep breath, he said in a deep voice, That man is an invincible demon. The fishman Arlong said coldly. In the past, Jinbe, Fisher Tiger, and Little Hachi were all annihilated by Dustless's overwhelming strength. The overwhelming power made them unable to retaliate at all. They were like clowns who were being toyed with wantonly. If you are targeted by him, I'm afraid your good days will come to an end, ha. Arlong laughed heartily, and in order to continue to add pressure to Luffy and others, he continued, His strength is beyond your imagination, Admiral? That's just his strength on the surface. I've personally seen how terrifying he is. That man punched and kicked the retired General Z until he was bleeding profusely. The fishman Arlong relentlessly put pressure on Luffy and others. As long as Luffy and others can live in fear, he will be satisfied. How is it possible? How can he be so strong? Sanji sucked in a breath of cold air and said incredulously. I heard that Z was a former Marine Admiral. His strength is beyond imagination. He once fought with One Piece, Roger. If you talk nonsense again, I will kick your head off. Sanji warned fiercely, instinctively thinking that the fishman Arlong was talking nonsense. His sensei Redfoot Zeph had been in the New World before. Although he was just an unknown pirate, Redfoot Zeph was very clear about the New World. Fart, I saw all this with my own eyes. Lying to you? Who do you think you are? Looking at Sanji, the fishman Arlong said disdainfully. This group of guys really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They think that they can do whatever they want with some strength. East Blue may be invincible, but looking at the whole New World, they may not even be cannon fodder for those great pirates. It's ridiculous to think that they are invincible with a mere 30 million berries bounty. Zoro and Sanji and others looked at each other. The fishman Arlong was obviously not lying. The fear and panic that went deep into his bones could not be faked at will. And the fishman Arlong has no need to deceive them. Chapter 688. The fishman Arlong laughed. Although he has been defeated and may end up in prison in the future, he was still happy to be able to mock and intimidate the Straw Hat Pirates. Do you think I'm exaggerating enough? The contemptuous smile on Arlong's face became clearer and he didn't hide it. He said coldly, I can tell you clearly that man is beyond your imagination. You know what will happen if you are targeted by him. Over the years, the people who have been noticed by Dustless have all ended tragically. How can a nobody like you know so much? Nami asked the doubts in her heart. Since Wu Chen's strength was so strong with the identity and strength of Arlong, it was impossible for him to appear in front of Wu Chen. Nobody? Hearing this, the fishman Arlong stared gloomily at Nami, then lowered his head and his eyes changed. He growled, because he is the most noble and lawless group of people in the world. He is also the biggest garbage of human beings. He is the legendary World Dash. I seem to hear you talking about me behind my back. Really, Arlong, you kid, I was kind enough to spare your life, but now you are talking bad about me. The strange voice spread like a ghost into everyone's ears. The sudden voice stopped the fishman Arlong from speaking. It's familiar. Luffy frowned, he always felt that the voice was familiar and subconsciously looked over. What are you doing here? You are not welcome here. Zoro was sweating, his nerves were tense, and his expression was cold as he ordered the expulsion order. The sharp sword in the scabbard was out of the scabbard, and he was on guard against the enemy. Such a nervous Sauron caused everyone to freeze. They all looked at the person who had suddenly stirred up the situation. Immediately their eyes widened and the fear in their eyes was clearly visible. The messy hair was messy, and the corners of his mouth outlined a faint smile. It was neither evil nor righteous, contradictory and strange. The man in front of them gave a very strange feeling. His face was kind, but there was an invisible ruthlessness. Although there was no breath leaking out, no one noticed when he appeared. Perhaps he had made up his mind to kill Luffy and the others. "It's you?" Seeing Dustless appear, Luffy showed a kind smile and his careless appearance made Zoro, Sanji and others speechless for a while. This guy doesn't seem to have figured out his position. "You don't have to be so nervous, my mission is only to catch the fishman Arlong, you are not in the scope of my mission." Dustless's mouth raised a gentle smile, indicating that they did not need to worry. "Your words won't work even if you try to fool a kid." Nami shouted coldly and glared at Dustless. "He is telling the truth. You have to believe him." Luffy shouted and immediately jumped out to slap Nami's face. Hearing this, Nami stared at Luffy angrily. She thought that this kid's head was made of elm pimple. She thought that when a marine meets a pirate there is only one end. Either you die or I live. Seriously? You're obviously asking for your own humiliation. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. He could clearly feel that several killing intents were locked on him, and Zoro, who was standing in place, had disappeared like a ghost. Suddenly, Dustless's line of sight suddenly darkened. "Such a big sneak attack, you and Hawkeye are really far apart, Zoro-kun." Raising his head and looking up at Zoro who was falling from the sky, Dustless's mouth raised a contemptuous arc, and then he casually raised his thin right arm. What does he want to do? Sanji, Luffy and others were puzzled and full of confusion. Clang! There was a ripple in the air, and Zoro's sharp sword mercilessly slashed at Dustless. Did he succeed? How is that possible? The joy on his face turned into dullness, and Zoro then roared out in disbelief. This strange scene, which should only be limited to mythological stories, happened in front of his eyes. Looking up, Dustless's face remained unchanged. He resisted Zoro's invincible attack with just one finger. It's just a casual and simple finger. Are you done dancing, boy? Her other hand quietly touched Zoro's face. Her white thumb closed and then she flicked it out lightly. Bang! Boom boom boom, Zoro's face changed dramatically, and he spat out scarlet blood from his mouth. His body flew out like a cannonball and there was a violent explosion. His body smashed several walls in succession. How can he be so strong? He defeated Zoro with just one finger. Is this guy really human? The fear in Nami's eyes was difficult to hide. Dustless's exaggerated offensive stunned all of them. Like Zoro, it was the first time they had seen such a situation in their lives. Bastard, you are not allowed to hurt my companions, otherwise I will also hit you. Compared to the fearful Nami, Captain Luffy took a step forward and stared coldly at Dustless. He lowered the brim of his hat, and the cold light condensed in his eyes was particularly dazzling. Dustless hurt his companions at will, which has indirectly touched Luffy's bottom line. Hit me? I'm sorry, Luffy. With your current strength, it's impossible for you to send me flying. Looking at Luffy's cold eyes, Dustless smiled and said. This smile didn't matter, but in Luffy's eyes, it was a naked provocation, a declaration of war. The whole person disappeared in an instant, and only a black afterimage could be seen, rushing straight to Dustless, and a strong fist greeted Dustless with full strength. Chapter 689. Dustless had a helpless expression on his face, and he cursed Sengoku without hesitation. It was because of him that he was sent here to work hard. The reason was very simple. Capable people do more work. His speed is quite fast, but unfortunately it's far from enough and there are many flaws. Others may not see Luffy's figure, but Dustless can see it clearly. He can clearly see that Luffy is flying towards him in a straight trajectory. His whole body has changed strangely, and his arms are stretched without limit. Boom! The air suddenly trembled and ripples visible to the naked eye spread out. Looking up, he saw Dustless casually grabbing Luffy's fist with one hand. His expression was indifferent and calm, as if he had done something insignificant. You can catch me? Luffy, who has always been energetic, couldn't help but look sluggish at this moment. The enemies he had encountered in the past, except for his grandfather, Garp, few people could do this. Let me go. With a loud shout, Luffy began to struggle, twisting his body violently, trying to break free from Dustless's hands, and using all his strength to the limit. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Dustless's hands seem to be connected to the earth, and it is impossible to break free easily. After a few breaths, Dustless didn't even move his feet. He stood quietly in the same place, letting Luffy struggle at will. His whole body was as stable as Mount Tai, and he couldn't be shaken. "Bastard, let go of Luffy, don't underestimate people, we are the entire pirate group." An indignant and unhappy voice came from behind, and then an awe-inspiring hurricane suddenly came. Wuxia turned his head slightly, glanced at the golden-haired young man, and then turned his head again. As if he didn't exist, he ignored him directly. Looking closely, that figure is one of the three major forces of the Straw Hat Pirates, Sanji, who will be called Blackfoot in the future. Let go of Luffy. Sanji's whole body rotated several times in succession, and his black iron-like toes rose from the ground, producing an unparalleled force under the high-speed rotation. Seeing Dustless unmoved, Sanji greeted him mercilessly. "Got it?" The moment he touched the back of Dustless's head, Sanji was overjoyed. However, before he could be proud for long, a strange energy fluctuation erupted from Dustless's body. A strong repulsive force swept out along with a cold shout. "Shinra Tensei." Bang. The unexpected Sanji was no exception. The repulsion eroded his body and his face suddenly became pale as snow, and he immediately flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Coincidentally, he suffered the same fate as Sauron and was easily sent flying. After smashing through several walls, he fell into the ruins, his life or death unknown. "Bastard, what did you do to Zoro and Sanji?" Seeing that his teammates were easily killed, Luffy roared loudly. His eyes were bloodshot and Luffy's breathing was abnormally heavy. He gasped and stared at Dustless ferociously. He wanted to tear him into pieces. "Don't worry, it's just a skin injury. Their physique is very strong and they won't die. Of course, your ability to choose teammates is also unexpectedly strong." Dustless explained softly, his tone was somewhat surprised. As everyone knows, Luffy is a person with a lot of nerves. To put it nicely, he is simple and naive. To put it bluntly, he is an idiot. But his ability to choose teammates is not to be underestimated. In the future, every character of the Straw Hat Pirates will have a high bounty, and even the bounty of all the members will exceed 1.5 billion berries. A sharp sound came from the front, and an arm that extended without limit smashed into his face. "This time I will definitely hit this bastard." Luffy's face was full of hope. Dustless lowered his head and seemed to be thinking about something. He didn't pay attention to the incoming rubber fist. What surprised Luffy was that the moment he attacked Dustless, he suddenly turned his head and easily avoided the attack. "How is this possible? Does this guy have eyes on his head?" Nami exclaimed in disbelief. She had seen Wu Chen's every move. Luffy's face was also full of astonishment. His optimistic state of mind couldn't help but be a little frustrated. Dustless remained calm from the beginning to the end. That tranquil gaze silently told him that everything was under control. "You are far from your father, Luffy." Dustless's eyes rippled, and his tone was full of disappointment. The current Luffy is just a small character. Dustless tried to make himself interested in Luffy, but he couldn't do it. He is too weak, more fragile than any enemy Dustless has fought before. "You know my grandfather and my father?" When mentioning the word father, Luffy's tone was obviously trembling and hopeful. He hasn't seen his father yet, he hasn't even seen him, and he doesn't even know what he looks like. "I don't just know them, but I have a deep relationship with them," Dustless whispered, thinking of the figures of Durag and Garp in his mind. If their strength is calculated in terms of berries, their bounty is at least 800 or 900 million berries. This is also Dustless's personal guess. Today the Jianghu, 4 emperors, Big's mom has a bounty of 850 million berries. The strength of Durag and Garp can compete with the Jianghu, 4 emperors. Even Garp's strength is far beyond this number. Although he is now old, his strength is still incredible. Hearing this, everyone on the scene couldn't help but take a breath and stared at Luffy in shock. They didn't expect this silly boy to have such a shocking family background. The strength of his father and grandfather has reached the level of 800 or 900 million bounty. For Nami and others, they are legendary figures. Chapter 690. Luffy's face was also dull, as if his soul had been extracted. His eyes were empty and blank, and his whole person fell into a sluggish state, no different from a sculpture. Obviously, he was also shocked by his deceitful grandfather and the father he had never met before. This is a diversion, deliberately making us take it lightly, don't be fooled. Zoro, who stood up from the ruins, shouted. His eyes were staring at Dustless, and the three swords that were out of their sheaths reflected an invincible sharpness. Looking at the cold gleaming Tachi, there was a burning tingling sensation in his eyes. Make you take it lightly? Hearing this, a sneer appeared on Wu Chen's unchanging face. He said disdainfully, for adults, killing a baby in swaddling clothes is as simple as eating and drinking water. Do you think you can take it lightly? Boring. Zoro's face was even colder. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in midair, and then Sanji broke out of the ground and was attacked by the Shinra Tensei. He was obviously more embarrassed than Zoro, and holes in his bright clothes were everywhere. Is this the strength of an admiral? It's really beyond imagination. Sanji's face was dignified, and even though he tried to suppress it, his whole body still trembled uncontrollably. It's not that he is afraid of Dustless. At the beginning of the road of sea pirates, he has already seen life and death. It's the silent oppression that seems to pierce his soul, and the shadow hidden in his heart can't be waved away. Being stared at by Dustless, even if it's just a casual glance, Sanji has a feeling of soul trembling. But even so, Sanji still refused to give up like a rock. Your problem pirate group is not strong, but everyone's tenacity cannot be underestimated. Dustless's tone was full of praise and admiration. The strength of these people is barely average or even inferior, but everyone's tenacity and courage to fight and refuse to give up are admirable. Don't come over, I'm a rubber man, he can't hurt me, I'll deal with him. Seeing that Zoro and Sanji were about to join forces to attack Dustless again, Luffy quickly stopped them. He is a rubber man and pain is just a concept for him. From childhood to adulthood, for about 17 years, only Garp can make Luffy feel pain. Dustless's face gradually became cold, and his palm was replaced by black steel. His cold eyes looked at Luffy carefully, and immediately threw him out mercilessly. Boom boom, the ground couldn't withstand the erosion of the turbulent force and a large pit appeared. Cough, it hurts. Unprecedented tingling like a tidal wave and Luffy's face twitched. I'm a rubber man, how can I feel pain? Luffy's tone was filled with surprise and confusion. The only person who could cause him such pain was his grandfather, Garp. Dustless was the second person in his life. Luffy says if. Dustless explained. His voice was very soft, but it was so infectious that everyone could hear it clearly. Don't be fooled by him, he is deliberately attacking our confidence, let's attack him together. Zoro quickly shouted, his tone was full of magic that was difficult to erase, instantly pulling everyone's mind back. Zoro and Sanji looked at each other and immediately rushed towards Dustless. They used to fight one-on-one with others, but now they are facing a strong enemy beyond imagination, so naturally they dare not be arrogant. They can only do their best to fight. Stupid. His eyes turned and a circle of ripples spread out from his eyes. The repulsive force that broke out of his body was unstoppable like the autumn wind sweeping the fallen leaves. This is a power without substance and it can't be stopped at all. Shinra Tensei. The invisible repulsive force is almost invincible. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. With two loud noises in succession, Zoro and Sanji were forced back in an instant. Although they were prepared, they were easily defeated and their expressions were gloomy. No one else can get close to him, is there any need for this duel to go on? Wanxiang Tianyin. While the two were contemplating, a gravitational force locked them, and their bodies drifted uncontrollably towards Dustless. Seeing this, Zoro's face turned cold and a cold aura hung on his face. He raised his sword that was sharp enough to cut steel, and with a pull of gravity, the white slash went straight towards Dustless. How many times do I have to say it before you understand? Are you so stubborn that you can't recognize reality? The sharp slash cut through the ground, leaving an indelible mark, crossing layers of space and swallowing Dustless, annihilating him in an instant. In the battle between the strong, it is always those who will not make a sound that will be affected. This kind of fragile attack is useless. Dustless raised his hand, and at the moment of contact, he suddenly shot towards the slash with one hand, and the destructive force directly scattered the slash. This is the strength of an admiral. How did he train his body? Zoro swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice. His tone was filled with horror. This was the first time he understood the horror of an admiral. He didn't expect the reality to be so absurd and cruel. This was not a battle at all but an adult playing with a child. There was no comparison between the two sides. Zoro's heart was dead. Dustless only used the power of one hand to easily disperse his strongest slash. This is not a gap in strength. The gap in strength can be made up by teamwork and the number of people. The gap in dimensions is useless no matter how hard they try. Chapter 691. Dustless immediately frowned as if he had noticed something. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, and a cold killing intent emerged between his eyebrows. He stared at Ah Long, who had already untied the rope, and his killing intent turned into a solid heartbeat. His whole body turned into countless photons and immediately whizzed out. I'm right in front of you and you still want to run away? The photons condensed in front of Ah Long and turned into Dustless's figure. His eyes were filled with endless indifference. I met you 10 years ago. At that time you were the same as now. You didn't make any progress. Shut up, mere human. Fear and panic emerged in Ah Long's ferocious eyes. He recalled Dustless's cruel means after capturing the enemy. Hesitation flashed through his eyes, and his fangs, which were far denser than a shark's, bit toward Dustless's head. These sharp saw-like teeth were enough to easily bite through steel. Its power was infinite. You today are still the same as you were 10 years ago. The result is destined to be the same as 10 years ago. Dustless announced softly, indifferently judging Ah Long's ending. Photons floated on the tip of his foot. In just a blink of an eye, countless rays of light gathered and dyed Dustless's entire calf golden. The condensed force was enough to easily destroy a mountain. Lightspeed kick. A straight light beam shot out from the leg and instantly wrapped Ah Long's whole body. The earth suddenly trembled. Boom boom boom. The sound of explosions rang out and a super-large scale of fire rose into the air. The temperature increased by 100 times in a flash, and the steel bars used to build houses were melted into water. Ah Long, who was in the deep pit, had a tactful luster in his eyes, and his whole body was filled with a burnt smell. In this life, you can't appear here anymore. Glancing at him, Dustless walked straight toward the Straw Hat group of 4. 3 Sword Stream, 1080 Trouble Phoenix. The powerful slash shot out and hit Dustless in an instant, but the effect was negligible. Dustless, who was bathed in the slash, looked as if nothing had happened, and walked out with an indifferent expression. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. The sudden gravitational force locked onto Zoro, and his body flew uncontrollably towards Dustless. Bastard, it's this move again. Zoro struggled with all his might, but to no avail. He roared unwillingly. He was not a kind-hearted person, and all 3 blades flashed with cold light as they slashed towards Dustless. Naive. Seeing this, Dustless only smiled. He gently lifted his thumb and a light gathered at his fingertip. Although it was very weak, it revealed a sharp light that could penetrate everything. Lasers. The golden light whizzed out in a straight line. It was unstoppable. Pucci. Zoro suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest and he lost all his strength. He couldn't help but loosen his grip on his swords, and his expression turned ugly. Looking closely, he saw a burnt bloody hole in his abdomen, which was obviously caused just now, and the wound was still smoking. In this case, no matter how strong your vitality is, you will lose your combat power. At best, you can only linger on. To be honest, I have fought with as many pirates as there are grains of sand in the Ganges. Pirates like you who have tenacity and refuse to admit defeat are rare. If you have enough time to grow, you will definitely become strong. Dustless said firmly. Although these people are currently immature fledglings, their strong hearts have already made small achievements, but they lack tempering. So you came to kill us in advance. Marines are really despicable. Zoro tried his best to satirize. Zoro was like a candle in the wind, and the weak candlelight would be extinguished at any time. Boom. After a few breaths, Zoro finally couldn't support himself and fell to the ground, and his forehead was sweating uncontrollably. Green algae head. You bastard. Seeing that Zoro had lost his movement, Sanji's eyes cracked, and he turned into a storm, and his right calf gathered a majestic force that was enough to easily crush a building. On the surface, he and Zoro were very incompatible, but they cherished each other very much. You don't have a good memory at all. The powerful calf penetrated Dustless's body, and to Sanji's disbelief, Dustless's whole body was covered in bright photons, and he easily ignored his attack. How is this possible? How can you ignore my attack? Sanji's tone was full of surprise. It was the first time he had seen such a thing. The Marine Admiral in front of him was too evil. What is this trick? Is he also a ninja? He is different from Luffy in that clown buggy. Thinking of the clown buggy he met a while ago, Sanji's brain stopped thinking for a short time. I am the shining man who ate the shining fruit. My body can be naturalized and only people with haki can touch my strength. Of course, some weird devil fruit users can also do it. Dustless explained in a low voice. Just like the dark fruit, even if the host itself does not have haki, it can attack the devil fruit users. In addition, the same is true for the surgeon fruit. If you are done attacking, then it's my turn. His plain eyes were incomparably awe-inspiring, shooting out a cold chill. Dustless's whole body erupted with an unimaginable oppressive momentum, and the same move as the previous attack on Fishman Arlong, his calf turned golden in an instant. Unexpectedly, they were hit by the light head-on. Light speed kick. As Dustless' voice fell, the whole ground trembled violently and burst open like paper scraps. The charred Sanji could not move and had lost his will. You're the only one left, Luffy? And don't stare at me so ferociously. Turning his head, Dustless saw Luffy looking at him unkindly. He smiled in relief. I made you realize your own weakness and see your own limits. Therefore, you can train desperately without thinking about your own safety. You should thank me. Chapter 692. Luffy glared furiously, his little face twisting violently. It was even to the extent that due to his excessive rage, his entire body was like the crater of a volcano that had gone berserk. His entire body was suffused with an indescribable blazing heat that intended to incinerate everything into nothingness. You are asking for trouble. I said that the target was not your pirate group, but you didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The strength of an admiral is not something you can touch now. Dustless made an indifferent look. He said that he came because of Arlong. But you hurt my companions. Luffy didn't appreciate it. Dustless had hit Sanji and Zoro in succession, which had already touched his bottom line. He valued the safety of his companions more than his own life. So what, as a marine, it's already a great gift not to kill them. Dustless didn't care and his tone was somewhat magnanimous. The pirates they encountered in the past were just a face-to-face encounter and their bodies were separated from their bodies. Although Sanji and Zoro were seriously injured and had fainted, they were still able to save their lives, which was already a special treatment for them. Humph, you really don't know what to do. Seeing Luffy's eyes become more piercing, Dustless knew that his previous muscle show was in vain, and he couldn't make this guy retreat. Not only that, but it also aroused the wildness in his heart. Luffy, the gap between us is too far. It's difficult to make up for the gap between us by pure passion. Dustless said lightly. Even if the crawling creatures on land had wings, they would not be able to touch the eagles that were flying, let alone fight them. Less nonsense. Luffy, who was angry, completely ignored the words and raised his palm to Dustless, his eyes as cold as ice. Although he is familiar with Dustless, Luffy will not let go of the person who hurts his companions. Rubber pistol. The extremely tough arm stretched without limit and almost instantly, it was close to Dustless and smashed towards his stomach. Bang. With a loud bang, a smile appeared on Luffy's small face. He was sure that he had hit Dustless. The soft feeling of a human's abdomen was not a lie. However, the Dustless in front of him was as calm as a breeze. I clearly hit him, so why does he still look like nothing happened? Luffy's face was sluggish and his mind was blank. He had attacked with all his strength, but Dustless was unscathed. What a pity your strength is too weak. Dustless patted the corner of his wrinkled clothes and said without a change in expression. Just as Luffy thought, his attack did hit Dustless, but it felt like a soft fist to Dustless. It felt like he was just scratching an itch. Not only did he not feel any pain, but it also made Dustless's body itch. The gap between them was too big and the current Luffy was too weak. His strength was only at the level of a pirate with a bounty of 4,000 or 5,000 berries. Dustless felt bored when he thought about it. Rubber machine gun. The dense rain of bullets fell on Dustless and eroded his whole body, but Dustless still stood in the same place and his feet never moved. He was as tall and majestic as Mount Tai. Not only did he not feel pain, but because of Luffy's attack, his slightly itchy body was extraordinarily comfortable for a moment. Hey, why did you suddenly stop? After a while, Dustless looked at Luffy, who was as tired as a dead dog with his tongue hanging down, and asked in disappointment. Then he looked up at the gray sky. The setting sun in the distance had gradually dimmed and was about to sink into the sea. It was obviously not too late. It's time to end it. Retracting his gaze and staring at Luffy, Dustless's body turned into lightning and swept out. Because the speed of light was too terrifying, Dustless made a harsh roar every time he moved. That sharp whistling sound caused people to feel dizzy. In just the blink of an eye, Dustless descended from the sky, crossing layers of space and easily came to Luffy, grabbing Luffy's throat like a rabbit. In this way you won't have the ability to fight back. Black skin gushed out of the slender little hand and instantly eroded the whole arm. Pain, 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 it hurts. Luffy struggled with all his might. He grabbed Dustless's right arm and punched with all his might. However, it was as if his fist was made of steel. It made a crisp sound of boom boom boom. From Dustless's indifferent face, it was not difficult to see that the effect was negligible. The attack covered with armament haki. Even if you are a rubber man you will feel pain. Armament haki is the natural enemy of all ability users, and no ability user is an exception, and you are the same. No ability user of any system is immune to armament haki. Although Luffy is a rubber man, he will feel pain when attacked by armament haki. Let me go. Luffy gritted his teeth and roared. When Luffy was stuck like this, he realized that he was like a lonely boat in the ocean. There was no need for stormy waves, just a trivial breeze could easily overturn him. An unprecedented unwillingness poured into his heart, his eyes locked on Dustless, strong resentment broke out of his body, and the appearance of killing intent was particularly strange. Don't make such a scary expression, it will only make you more powerless. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He had seen too many of this kind of protesting and unwilling eyes. It was tantamount to a fantasy to change the reality of a fiasco. Let go of Luffy. The sluggish Nami picked up the rusty steel pipe and ran toward Dustless. The fear in her eyes was clear, but her face was firm. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.